Hi, listeners of Red Light Expose. This is Ellie Arrow. You're now going to hear the third live stream that we did as part of a fundraiser. You are going to hear us referring to the fundraiser throughout. The fundraiser has since finished, so there are no more prizes to win, but we still felt that we had an interesting conversation that was worth sharing on the podcast platforms, so here it is. I want to say there was both a doc that wanted to talk intimately, and then also, due to technology related shenanigans, I was unable to download the file for this, and I had to record the audio loopback on my computer. Then I had my WhatsApp on, and I was getting, the little pings it gives you when you get a message. So I'm so sorry. There will be some of my WhatsApp pings in this episode, I think. We didn't realize that StreamYard is quite expensive, and we were working off the free version, and that way we didn't have the files to just download and upload, which would have been really nice and quick. If you do like these live streams and you'd like to enable us to do them more often and then also be able to easily transfer them to the podcast sites, do consider donating. We are always open for donations. Otherwise, if you just like this project, obviously share it with people. Word of mouth is what we rely on so that people hear these conversations. Without further ado, here's the live stream. Hello, Internet. Today is our last day of our big fundraiser, our big raffle, big 2025 raffle. So, in case you don't know us, we are the Red Light Expose podcast, or many members and a guest. For Red Light Expose, we are a podcast that wants to dispel the simple sex workers' work story about the sex industry is empowering, fun, career choice, development aid, all kinds of crazy stories out there that need dispelling. Also, all the old myths about women corrupting society, destroying society, Horror of Babylon stuff. We're not into that either. We want to, get the stuff out there that's not talked about enough. And most of our team is experiential, has lived the industry, or, well, that's going to be a lot of women have lived the ripple effects of it. So we talk about that. And it's everything from personal stories to countrywide to international to what was happening hundreds of years ago, and different periods, different places, what's happening on our screens, what's happening in our books, what's happening in our homes, how it all connects back to prostitution, pornography, commercialized BDSM, the stripping industry. That's our big four topics. And yeah, there's not a lot of money in this area. That's why we're fundraising. It's not very popular to talk about it from this perspective, from a human rights perspective. Not an empowerment story and not a story of disgust. And so that's why we need some support. And we're intimately going to be doing some of these live streams just to have a more casual chat rather than our episodes, which are a bit more structured. And I have three really cool women with me today. I'm just going to hand it over to my co-host, Sybil Joe, because last time you were meant to be on the stream and then the laptop just went nope. So
Yeah, I had to go on a whole technology adventure. I'm so excited that I get to do a redo. My name is Sybil Joe. I've been a part of Red Light Expose for a little over a year now, and just so excited to meet all of these brilliant women in conversation about the way that sexual abuse affects communities across the world. The fact that we are so global and so connected. And I think, Ellie, I've heard you say, I think we're the only people really doing this on such a scale, and realizing that our stories are the same regardless of what continent we're on. I'm in the US, down in the Southeast Bible Belt. I experienced 15 years of commercial sex abuse, as well as parenting 4 children, working in low income jobs, and just really seeing this play out on the ground in rural communities. And I'm so excited to be here talking to Esmeé and Victoria. And I'm going to pass it off to one of y'all.
Okay. So hi everyone, I'm Victoria Guggenheim. I'm also a co-host at Red Light Expose, and I have my own horror stories about the commercial BDSM industry. We also have that episode on the Red Light Expose podcast episodes on YouTube, Spotify, and where all good podcasts can be listened to. So if you want to listen to my story, it is called Call Me Master, and that's how abusive men like Gaiman and Tate run the fetish scene. And I've been at Red Light Expose for just under a year, and Ellie and I have become very firm friends, and so have Esmeé and I, actually, because I also work with Reducer Rising. And I'm really proud of what we're building, and I think this fundraiser is really important. Otherwise, I would not be giving it my time, because we're the only collective that actually genuinely lifts up survivors' voices without it being salacious, without it being cheap, tawdry. They're genuine stories. They're, to me, something that's really important about it is that the survivor gets to speak in her own words. It's not pre-scripted. It's not something polished for TV. It's actually genuine stories, and also how to move on from this abuse and how to create a better world. And that's actually what Esmeé does a bit at Medusa Rising, because it's all about world building women. So without further ado, I will just hand over to the wonderful Esmeé.
My God, Victoria, you are one of the greatest promoters I think I've ever met. Like you just gave everybody our tagline like it was nothing. Hey, I am Esmeé Streachailt. I am the founder and editor of Medusa Rising. See, cool sign that I made behind me back here. We do a lot of everything. We publish art and writing, critical thought, creative thought, speculative ideas about how the world can be better for women, by women. And our other sort of main mission is to build deeper and broader coalitions among women and feminist organizations globally. Now, that is a very, very, very big ambition. It's going to take probably a while. But I'm hoping to begin to make and to collect and combine people so that they can find the places where their issues and efforts overlap and they can amplify each other. I feel like there's a million excellent feminist projects happening on the planet, and what's holding us back, besides the fact that the patriarchy is a big, deep, well-funded thing, is that we're not connected and we can't amplify each other very easily. So crossover moments like this, where we're all going to hang out and get some money together for Red Light Expose and keep all of that good work happening. I think this is absolutely the most essential thing we can do.
So
Amen.
I totally forgot
No,
to
you
introduce. I totally forgot to introduce myself for people who don't know me. I'm over in Germany. I'm Ellie Arrow in Germany, and I've spent the last it's a long time now. It feels even longer. I've been 8 years in the movement, because we're famous as the brothel of Europe. And that's obviously not a positive nickname. And once you dig into what happens in our legal brothels, I mean, once I did, I was like, I can't forget about this, and I can't believe there isn't a gigantic human rights movement doing something about this. There is now. There wasn't so much 10 years ago. It's growing and growing, thankfully. It's intense work, though, and it's so deeply embedded in the culture. People struggle to picture a Germany without brothels at this stage. I've had the misfortune of spending the last couple of days reading a 600-plus page government report, which included really upsetting, insulting arguments like, we need brothels because heavily disabled men otherwise won't be able to get sex. The same report then also talks about how cognitively disabled women are exploited it brushes it barely. That's a whole rabbit hole that's one of the projects I'm working on, and I'm hoping to get some of these stories on the podcast, because certainly here in Germany, I'd like to know from you three if that happens over there. When you look in the media, the intersection of prostitution and disability is all about lonely, disabled men, ideally the quadriplegic, because he seems physically non-threatening, gentle, kind, a bit awkward, and he needs cuddles and maybe a bit more than that. And who wouldn't support that? Those kinds of stories are all over German media, to the point that they end up in a government report saying this is why it would be anti-disability rights to close down the brothels and, try find, get women support, safe houses, jobs, whatever it is they need. That's how popular that narrative is. And we have very little discussion of how disabled women are excluded from the job market, disproportionately abused in all kinds of settings, and then end up in the industry, and how the harms of the industry can worsen or cause disabilities. That's something I'm working on, and it's that's not talked about. It's like barely talked about anywhere
If I can
else.
chime in, Ellie.
Go for it.
Yeah, because actually one of the things that is a really dangerous narrative in the UK is the whole sex work is work narrative, but it's peddled out to university students and in their lectures and classes. So one of the things was there was someone at Goldsmiths and they were studying, I think, counseling and psychology. And the lecturer was saying how good sex work would be for disabled students because they could just, plot their study time around their work. And there was also multiple universities doing kind of pro kind of sex work handout booklets like, well, here's how to be safe if you do it, and here's what you should be doing. And I was like, but you're actively promoting it, and that's not neutral. All of the language is really positive. There was no reviewing of the risks, nothing like that. And there was actually there was one of the students that pushed back, and I think there's now been some aggro with Goldsmiths now because not everyone has the sex work is work view, but that's everywhere. It's embedded, it's endemic, and that also extends to how men view desperate women on social media. So if they're a little bit, if they're disabled, impaired, sanctioned, like there was a woman recently. It actually tore me to pieces. So on Twitter, there was a woman, I think she had green and black hair, and she was saying how she was sanctioned, how she wouldn't be able to pay for her car. She doesn't know what to do. And like 3 or 4 tweets down was like, oh, give it a few weeks, she'll just be on OnlyFans. And I've never wanted to get into the screen and physically punch a guy's lights out so much. And so what you're saying is, I can't wait for a few weeks' time to crack one off to a disabled woman who's desperate. Like, that's what you're saying about yourself. And so it's just everywhere. Like, guys joke about it. It's in universities. And also I'm going to call this financial coercion, because this is happening in the government, where if you slash any subsidies, any grants, any bursaries, the immediate funnel is into OnlyFans every single time. And 95% of those women don't want to be there. They want to leave. I think I want to say it was a South Bank study that was talking to prostituted women in multiple different arenas. And yeah, the statistic was 95% wanted to leave. And so what they're doing through this financial coercion is just creating a straight funnel where you can just go straight in to any sex work, well, quote unquote sex work, any form of prostitution, stripping. And also, who does that serve? That serves the horrible, sleazy politicians who want to see those students naked. And I would bet quite a significant amount of cash that the men who are voting for legislation to cut this funding probably pay an awful lot to quote unquote performers on OnlyFans because it serves them. So what they want is access to fresh meat. So that's the state of play in the UK. And there's also a problem as well with anyone who's left the industry immediately seems to think that anyone who is sex industry critical is critical of them. And that's not true. So we need to disabuse people, especially women, of that myth as well. So that's the kind of state of play here. And it is grim. Yeah. And that's why we fight and why you need to give us money. So tickets are on sale now up till 11:59 Pacific Standard Time at redlightexpose.betterworld.org. And the winners are announced June 28th. And also, if you are so inclined, you could potentially win a makeup session by yours truly. Whether you want to pop some war paint on for a protest or turn into a fantasy creature, you can decide. So tickets on sale now until 11:59 June 27th Pacific Standard Time. redlightexpose.betterworld.org.
I totally did not specify that this is not just a fundraiser where we're like, just give us money. If you go on the website, redlightexpose.betterworld.org, you can win prizes. There's a multitude of feminist books there. There's gift cards, there's wellness experiences, there's art, there's really just go and have a look. And this is why we would love to just focus on a topic and just keep talking, but we will have to do intermittent ad breaks. Sorry about those. I know they're a little bit annoying, but it's we try to keep the costs low for producing this, but anything you put out there that looks vaguely professional has some running costs behind it, and a lot of woman hours. You know, Esmeé, a lot of woman hours. So that's why we do have to do the occasional bit of asking for funding. So that's what we're doing. We want to talk. So if you want to help us not have to do these ad breaks in the future and just be focused on the issues, then do have a look at the Better World page. So, but
yes, and I'll do my best to just ease them in with just smooth segues, so that it's not like totally in your face.
Greatest natural promoter, I'm telling you. Oh my gosh.
And there's a few dogs who want to have their say.
Yes, the dog is, I just unmute myself and the dog has noticed something else he needs to bark at.
I'd like to think that you have like a sex industry critical dog as well. So
I
like,
do
right
have
on,
a sex industry critical dog. He will happily chomp on people who are not being kind or decent to other human beings. Yes, that's one of his favorite
He's
things.
trained on Johns. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, you just can't come in my house. Like, those are just the rules, you know? Yeah. But I would happily turn him loose, you know? I'd be okay. I was thinking back to, you were talking about women in college being sort of encouraged toward prostitution as a way to pay for school, right? And I was thinking back a few years. I can't remember when this was exactly now, because COVID and the last 10 years have shattered my sense of time. But it was back during one of the discussions of like student loan debts in the United States and proposals to cancel them, right? Sort of stop this whole indentured servitude system that we have going on over here. And someone, I can't remember, was it in Ohio? A university was proposing to the young women there that they could enter into prostitution or OnlyFans in order to help pay for some of their tuition.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Wow. And do we remember when this wasn't a problem in the United Kingdom? When tuition was free. Just saying. So, just saying, if it's free, then they don't need to get naked to pay their bills. So, maybe we should go back to that, because it clearly worked until Tony Blair just went, oh, actually, we're not going to have that because you poor people can't go to university. It's like, oh, thanks for that, Tony. Great stuff.
In Sweden, you can get paid to do a university degree. You can get a stipend from the government. Yeah. I don't know if it's accessible to all, and I do know that Sweden still has social problems, but I mean, I know that sounds like heaven if you're...
It really does. Like, paid to learn. That sounds like, where do I sign? That sounds amazing.
Yeah, there is a little more commitment to developing, the greatest resource any country has, right? It's people. In some of the Nordic countries. So good on them for at least that much.
I love that y'all are bringing up this university to sex industry kind of pipeline. And it really is, I feel like people think that I'm cynical because I see intention behind things that other people don't see intention behind. And that's one of them. I have talked with Andrea about, I learned in university that in gender studies, we didn't have women's studies anymore. This is even down, we're the Bible Belt, but in the universities, these things, this was in 2003. I was learning that sex work was a viable feminist option for girls like me.
Yeah.
And my grandmothers, my mothers were backwards, and they were conservative, they were Puritan, they were pearl clutching, and of course I latched onto that.
Yeah.
And it worked.
This was part of the whole attack on the second wave analysis, right? And I think very, very, very careful picking apart of the histories and, as you say, the intentions behind things that all of those feminists in the 60s, 70s, and 80s did. Kind of pointing out that as far as woman as a resource, once upon a time, she was a resource for her reproductive ability and still is, and in the US will be again. But In the modern era, our modern era, the resource is the sexuality. The resource is access to the pleasure a man can take away for himself,
Yeah.
right? That's the resource that's being sought for in sexual exploitation. But it's the same, it comes down to the same thing. It's the use of a woman's body for a man's pleasure or projects, right?
Yeah.
That's the whole game. That's the baseline sort of patriarchal move all the way through. And it always floored me. I was in graduate school, I was finishing graduate school around 2003, and this third wave of feminism was rolling in with this sort of sex positive critique. And I was like, well, a lot of people really like sex. I don't know why that's an issue. I consider it a contact sport rather than, sort of watching it personally. But it was just, I said that to a group of men one day and they all fainted. They were talking about pornography. They were, I was with them and they got talking about porn, and I just looked at them and I said, fellas, I always thought sex was a contact sport. And that put a quick end to that conversation.
Bravo.
Yeah, but then the sex work is work, or sort of the sex positivity attitude, I felt, because I did not dive too deeply into it, I was trying to finish a PhD, was that we should probably take care of women who are in situations of sexual exploitation, that we should not treat them as pariahs, that we should not have a disgust-based approach to welcoming them back into the community and trying to find the care and resources that we need. Like a lot of those second wave feminists were not going, ew, whore. They were going, how do we get you a job? How can we help you when you're ready to come out? How do you, how do we build the community around you that prevents the vulnerability that puts women in that condition? And for that entire 2 generations of feminists were called, prudes and pearl clutchers. I mean,
and we were told not to read them. The only thing I learned about, I learned in class that you just might as well not read them. We've already learned from them.
Whoa. Okay.
That's a great way to, cooperate with the patriarchy by hiding away the single strongest critique of it that has ever existed. Because if you did go back and read those second wave women, you would be like, they didn't hate sex or prostitutes or life. They just wanted to fix it so that women weren't dying, so that men could have a good time. I mean, that's what it boils down to.
Yeah. Oh, I actually found out how much the second wave didn't hate sex. So I found out that Germaine Greer was in an Amsterdam sex positive magazine in the 70s and was their agony aunt and was like posing naked. And I'm just like, why does everyone cover this up? This is freaking amazing. Like, how is this? You know what I mean? And like, you look at Germaine Greer and everyone goes, oh no, she never did anything like that. Like, she was doing like erotic film with her boobs out. And I'm going, okay, so everyone has covered this up because for what reason? That what the woman's body is like profane? Does it not, fit with the contemporary understanding of the second wave narrative? Like, there were some that were actually very erotically adventurous. And that, I actually think, only framing all radical feminists from the 70s as disgust-based conservative does an immense disservice, especially if you look at kind of Audre Lorde's analysis on kind of reclaiming the erotic, all of that stuff. There's a huge breadth and depth of analysis, and I feel like we need to kind of go back to that, because
it's straight propaganda. It's not. It's not reality.
Like non-commodified eroticism. I think it's.
I consider what I experienced in the classroom as an advertisement. I saw many advertisements to enter prostitution on billboards, in the back of the phone book, and I consider that classroom it's just an advertisement. And like Esmeé was pointing out, and you, Victoria, like, the politicians are the ones buying us. So yes, of course they have an invested interest. It's the biggest industry on earth. There's money.
Yep. And like, this is the thing that really upsets me, because people don't seem to be able to join the dots. Like, how many sex scandals have we had, like, just in the UK alone, with coke-addled politicians hiring prostitutes? Like, you could just go and look at tabloids. Like from what? 10 years ago. Like the scandals are everywhere. And you think for a second, because it's suddenly like actually even further back, 20, 30 years ago, like there's like they're everywhere. So you really think because this has now gone digital that they're going to do it less? Like because they have like really?
Well,
Like to me
you
that's
know
just
what I
that's
think though?
lunacy.
I think I was so disappointed to miss Wendy last week. Because I
She
had
was
done
amazing.
I had done the donator recording with her, and I really wanted to talk to her more. And the way that she is able to break it down and, like you said, connect these dots, and she keeps coming back to everybody is making money off of this. And oh, there was something else you just said, but I had a brain fart. Somebody else say something, and it'll come back to
It'll
me.
come back to you.
No, it's okay.
I could
no,
skip
sorry, Esmeé.
to the writing project I'm working on right now. From
Oh
Abuse
yeah,
of
do it.
Is about the work of Hélène Cixous. She's one of these really complicated, hard to read French feminist theorists of the second wave. She did most of her really important work in the mid 70s through the 1990s. She's still with us, thank goodness, because she is an absolute lioness of a human being. And the work that she was doing in an essay like The Laugh of the Medusa was literally part of the reason I chose this name for this little organization.
Oh, amazing.
Really, really for real, like it's named for this essay because I'm a nerd, you guys. Is that woman should bring herself into the text, that one of the things women have been denied is access to knowledge, access to writing, access to the material expression of self, for all the same reasons that the law has divorced us from our bodies and made us unsafe.
Yeah.
And a lot of the writing that she's most famous for is almost erotic to read out loud. She's not writing about sex. It's just the rhythm of the thing and the texture and the metaphorical unfolding that she's doing as she's writing that became known as writing the body, right? In feminist circles in the 90s. This was a very big topic. And I'm thinking, you don't write that kind of, you don't write that sexually about writing. You don't write an essay called Coming to Writing that is about orgasm, essentially, if you are not really interested in, having that kind of fun, right? This whole idea that, back there were just these sort of like, it's the same thing as getting mad at the women who started prohibition in the United States, right?
Yeah.
They were working class women. They had working class husbands. Working class husbands took the paycheck to the bar on Friday, got a little hammered, came home, had sex with the wife. Often that was not so voluntary, and then got physical and then started hitting people. And they just wanted the men to stop acting like that. And if you take the booze out of the equation, most of them stop, right? That's where that begins. But the joke is, you look at these working class women from the early 20th century, right? And they're women who have been worn by their lives, right? They look like they have worked incredibly hard, like they live with someone who's incredibly hard to work with. And one of the jokes about it is, well, I mean, if that was my wife, I wouldn't really want to drink with her either.
Oh, wow.
This way of flipping, right? It's the same structure. It's this way of flipping a blame back on people who weren't the thing you need to blame, right? Or telling a story in such a way. Go ahead.
I was going to say, you probably know, what was her name? She carried the hatchet. She was a big prohibitionist and was it Mary something? I can Google it.
Well, I mean,
this is
also kind of happening around the time.
But when I found out, I found out the history you were just telling, when I finally found that out in my 30s, I was like, oh, prohibition makes sense now. It's amazing how many things that we are told, like, oh, that's just nonsense. That's just other people being crazy for no good reason, actually has to do with what women are trying to say.
Yeah. It's kind of the unwritten rule of misogyny. It's like, it's not only the woman's fault, but the woman's crazy for wanting it to happen in the first place, whether it's prohibition and so on,
Yeah. And in the US, there's always that sort of evangelical tent preacher kind of enthusiasm that an issue like prohibition can get tied up in. Almost everything gets tied up in that over here, right?
Yeah.
And then it becomes a matter of, well, these people who, won't dance because that's sinful also don't want you to drink. And this is not cool, And it gets the whole thing about, geez, the men are beating the crap out of their wives gets completely erased and forgotten.
Carrie A. Nation. That was her name. Carrie Nation.
Carrie Nation. Thank
She
you.
is worth a look up if anybody is interested. She lived a very enthusiastic life. She was great.
she was a dangerous woman. Yeah.
And when you research these
sorry.
when you research these historic women from like 150 years ago, you find they are working on the same issues as us, minus the technology.
Yes.
But it's all the same. It's men beating their wives. It's the exploitation of underage girls and some boys as well. It's prostitution. A lot of them are anti-war activists, pacifists. They're talking about labor and women's wages. And I'm just, I live in I spent most of my life and still now in university towns. So everyone's a leftist. Everyone's it's Antifa heavy towns, and they have these posters of Luxembourg and Thomas Sankara and all these people, but they never talk about that they were anti-prostitution. Like these things they just get, or a Kollontai. That's the part. Kollontai also interesting in the realm of, she was writing about destigmatizing sex outside of marriage and free love, but a pro-woman free love. I haven't read that yet. I would love to interview somebody who's a Kollontai expert. I have at least one person in mind I can ask, because and as we all know, this has been said many times, with every wave of feminism, it gets covered, it gets lost.
Yeah.
And we have to rediscover because we're told either these foremothers or herons or whatever term you want to use, pioneers get lost or they get rewritten, and so we only remember them for the ideas that the men want us to remember. I mean, I'm putting it simply, but it's true though.
And that's control of the media, right? Anytime, something that has given me so much hope through some very, very dark times was realizing that every time they allow us literacy, every time we're allowed to learn how to read and write, this is what we write about.
Yeah.
And so knowing it's excruciating to have to reinvent the wheel, but knowing that we will keep it reinventing the wheel no matter what, for me, keeps it going.
Yeah. And that's also why Wendy wrote her book. Oh, no, he didn't, because the guys keep stealing women's ideas all the time.
Exactly.
Yes. And if you do want to buy a ticket to potentially win her book, you can go to redlightexpose.betterworld.org. And if you get a ticket or 3, then you'll be in with a better chance of winning. And winners will be announced on June the 28th. Remember, that's redlightexpose.betterworld.org.
And there's 6 different books, all focused on women's issues, prostitution, intimate partner violence, men stealing women's ideas, abuse in the Amish community. So we have that covered. And there's one on women printmakers, so women in the arts, because we get forgotten for our revolutionary thoughts. We also get forgotten for our creative contributions. Because why are there no women composers? Why are there no? And then when you look for them, they do exist. They're just not played anymore. Right. It's like on every issue, it's quite systematic, popular in their time. Like there's a lot of. I was listening to this one audiobook on like a certain period in British history after the Napoleonic Wars, and there's all these important women at the time, women in the arts who were super successful. They were people would go crazy about them and worship them, and we barely remember them. We remember a lot of the men from the time, but even women who are big in their time, a lot of women painters, opera singers, composers, all sorts, they don't get put into like the halls of fame or whatever the equivalent is at the time. And that's,
Yeah.
you know, they're stealing women ideas, and then there's just not taking care of the political and artistic legacy.
Mhm.
Yeah, and one prime example, by the way, is Mozart's sister. Did you even know he had a sister?
Yeah.
Like
No.
Maria Anna Mozart, who was arguably better than he was, but has just long
Mhm.
been forgotten until recently. People go, "Oh crap, he had a sister. Oh, sorry about that," and then she's just been forgotten. You're like, "Oh, for fuck's sake," you know.
Things to
So
track
it just
down.
happens all the time. Yeah, it happens all the damn time. But this is also why it's really important to kind of preserve our legacy and keep doing the projects that we're doing, because if we don't do that, then we're kind of, you know, lost to the sands of time. So this is why I think kind of repositories are really important, why podcasts are really
Mhm.
important. And it's not just getting the idea out and leaving it, it's making sure the idea is put out again and again and again, so it has more of a chance of thriving. You know, so like just as we've got genes, we've got memes, we've got ideas. So the more you put the idea out there, the greater the chance someone's going to pick it up and run with it. So like the idea of culturally preserving women, it's like, hello, we're 51% of the population.
Right.
You know, we should have our, you know, our talents preserved rather than being lost to history. So it's, to me, it's a no-brainer.
The good news is everybody who's listening knows a brilliant woman.
It's very true. Yeah.
There's no shortage. And like I said, we're going to keep doing it. And, you know, I think I was saying before we started the live stream, 13 or so years ago when I was exiting and I was in a really dark place mentally, emotionally, financially, materially. And I was discovering these ideas that I had been taught in college not to read. And I was just absorbing all of this, like overwhelming information. And I started to realize, though, like I said, as soon as they let us write, we write about this. As soon as they let us talk, we talk about this. So I started just combing the internet, and I found some radical feminist blogs. I found Ellie Arrow on YouTube, and I found WLRN, anything I could find, but it was scarce. And then
Yeah.
now, fast forward to 2025, the conversations that are being had, I cannot keep up. All of our guests, I just met Esmeé, and I was like, oh, I haven't heard of Medusa Rising. So I moved over to medusarising.org, where they just have pages and pages of articles to
We
dive
just got
into,
started.
and getting the ideas out there, but also reworking the ideas together and chewing the ideas together.
Yeah.
I loved working. She's a big hero of mine, and she talks in a lot of her books about, I'm writing this as an action, not as a product.
Yes.
I'm having a conversation, and it's going to change, and it's going to, you know, we
I
move with
love
the
that.
times. The times
Yeah.
aren't going to wash us over, because
Yeah.
we're here. Like you said, we're
Yeah.
51% of the population. We're here.
Yeah, and the thing is, you know, patriarchy is chameleonic and adaptable. That's evolution, right? So if you threaten an idea, it morphs and changes. So this is why having a flexible approach to tackling its core is really important, because, you know, you don't know how it's going to morph and shift next. It's just the formula is the same, and the formula is keeping women down. So it's really important to have this kind of solidarity and sisterhood, and make sure that we are sharing ideas and having them as continuous conversations. Otherwise, you end up with that discussion panel on the life of Brian. It's like, oh, he's been kidnapped. Right. That calls for immediate discussion. And it's like, oh, for fuck's sake.
Oh God.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, you don't need that.
Oh my God. My God, this
Yeah.
is terrible. Somebody please do something. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And
I was going to say,
So-
one of the things that people can win as part of a fundraiser is a 1-year subscription to Medusa Rising. Esmeé, do you want to let people know what that enables them to do for that
Yes.
year?
everything. The subscription that we're giving is the sort of highest level of subscription that we have. We call it the Pythia rate, after the great goddess Python, who used to be and also guard the what is it? I'm just going to lose the word right now. Delphi, the oracle at Delphi, and
Yes.
the cave out of which all the lithium comes. This is one of the oldest stories about her. I think she's probably one of the like monsters that Gaia and Uranus made. Anyway, I'm going to get sidetracked. Anyhow, what you can have from Medusa Rising is everything. All of the content that we publish, all of the podcasts are free. But some of the posts that we share are not completely free. There's always like a preview that's a pretty good chunk of something, and then the rest of it. But this also gives you things like commenting rights. It gets you into sort of special private events with me and the rest of the crew. We're going to have one of those actually in July. What else? Recommendations for reading or ways to connect with organizations, etc. Like I make sure that everything that we do is available to the people who take the Pythia rate subscription, which in the normal world, if it's not a gift, is $130 a year. But for you, just the price of the tickets that you're getting. So there you go.
Woo!
Yeah.
Bravo.
Wow, what a deal.
Yes, it's well worth it. Yes. You have a whole delicious archive of wonderful things to peruse. So, yes, don't leave it too late.
Yeah, soon we're going to have writing that Victoria's done on there besides just some poetry. There's going to be some more goodness coming along through her
And
moving brain.
yeah, and I'm also I'm just finishing up the podcast as well, where my voice is so loud it distorts the mic. Sorry, everyone. Like I honestly tried to normalize it, and I'm just like going, I'm just too fucking loud. It's just not going to happen. So I've just had to turn the gain way down on my mic. I was saying to everyone just before we started, it's just I think it's just from me, just generally crooning in the shower and crooning on a daily basis, that your diaphragm just gets trained, and then you can't not melt. It's just
there are worse problems to have.
I know, right? It's first world singing lady problems. It's all good. But yeah, I'm really excited because I'm talking about AI and the future of technology and where that's going to go. I'm talking about the custodian problem because we've noticed that there is a reduction in brain power with chronic ChatGPT users if they haven't got previous mental cognitive reserves, like if they're non-PhD students, if they're not generally using a lot of fluid intelligence, so like basically like Mr. and Mrs. Average. If you are using it, you can lose, I think, about 40% of your fluid intelligence, according to some studies, which is absolutely terrifying, and you become more reliant on it over time. So I'm talking about that, the coming custodian problem, talking about the fact that AI is rewriting history, and historians are now turning to ChatGPT to actually fill in the blanks. And the thing is, large language models can hallucinate, so it can give you total falsehoods. So, and I mean, I'm just two very small examples was when I tested it the other day, it said, English people don't pronounce the H in herbs, and I was nearly apoplectic with rage. I was like, excuse me? How dare you? Of course we do. There's a fucking H in it. And then there was, and also it said that Judith Butler was a radical feminist, and I'm going, I don't know who's trained you, but you need go home
in an alternative universe.
Well, yeah, so everywhere on the internet, she is referred to as a radical feminist. So it's what they're scraping that's wrong. See, I have such complicated thoughts about this. I do not want to derail this conversation, but I am going to say this one thing: the AIs, even the large language models, can still be trained. Right? They can be made to read more feminist content. They can be made to look at the history that they're not picking up on, right? Like I think
we can make our own.
We could build our own, frankly. That would be a good idea, but they take an awful lot of money.
And energy.
But I mean, you can teach it the thing that you need it to do and then make it better at that. And that also can be added to the large language model. So there's like some opportunities there, but I think like the big things to be afraid of are big things to be very afraid of.
Absolutely.
We can critique it and use it, right? Like we do everything.
Well,
that's human.
Like live stream technology. Technology. Who's using that? It's like Andrew Tate over there and Hassan Piker over there, and one is a pimp and one is a proud sex an alleged pimp. Okay, but yeah,
that's
I would say that for legal reasons.
I would argue that ChatGPT is slightly less than neutral in that respect, obviously, but
it is.
Yeah. But I also think, this is also why I'm really excited to launch the episode that obviously I've done with Esmeé, because we do talk about, well, if you can train a large language model to be a psychopath, which they already have done, you can train one to be a radical feminist. but it's where the money's going. It's like, and I feel like it's the law of entropy all over again, where it's like, of course you're going to train it to be a fucking psychopath because there's so much terrible material. It's like, oh my God, you know, it's like you could train it for its highest good, but instead you want to basically make Skynet. Congrats, well done.
The men of Silicon Valley are socially inept, and they have too much time and too much money, and they have delusions of grandeur. I mean, I'm saying nothing new here. And my experiences with ChatGPT talking about, at first I even go like into the settings and say never use the term sex work, I'm allergic. It still ends up doing it. Like that's how far down the rabbit hole it's trained, that it struggles, you know, it's trained to use politically correct language. At the same time, you know, the people running these companies don't give two shits about human rights. Like they couldn't care less. It's just something public facing they have to do. But Sybil Jo, I interrupted you, so please go for it.
No, you're fine. No, I'm so glad that y'all are interacting with these things so that I don't have to. I just relegated myself to not knowing. But I remember in the 90s, being a child in the early 90s and hearing the adults talk about what television was doing, what chronic television watching for kids my age, and my mom restricted my screen use for that reason. I even remember adults talking about calculator use in classrooms.
Yeah.
Bringing people's, you know, cognitive abilities down. And then the early aughts happen, and every 2-year-old had a phone in their hand all of a sudden. And nobody talked about it anymore. And I was considered a conspiracy theorist for bringing up the conversation even. And so like when we say AI reduces people's cognitive ability,
there's also been
we've known this.
Well, there's also been instances of chronic phone use and a reduction in IQ as well. There's been a few studies on that.
It's all the same thing.
Yeah, it's some variations on a theme and it's relative to kind of complexity, how much you use it, you know, what you're using it for, and so on. But you know, the thing is, we do have, I mean, I guess it's regression to the mean, really, where it's like the idea really is energy conservation if you're a complex, you know, animal, which is why a lot of people have a tendency not to exercise. And so if you can conserve energy, it takes a lot of energy to power your brain. I think it's about 20% of your daily energy needs, really, if you have a decent brain, sometimes more. It's like, and if you look at really good chess players as well, it's almost like they're running a marathon and their brain's in overdrive. So, you know, if you can conserve that energy, then your body goes, oh, we don't really need to think about that, we can do this instead, and then it all slowly turns to mush. So that's how that works. So it's kind of, it plays on the innate laziness of humans. Oh, I'm sorry.
It's like being the opposite of Einstein, right? Like it's apocryphal, but theoretically, at least according to the story, he said, never remember anything you can write down, and never write down anything you can look up. And then some reporter or someone said, well, why on earth would you do that? He said, because it leaves your brain free to think. But he was using his brain to do things, you know. He was trying to keep the clutter out so that he could do the thing, right? As opposed to replacing his brain with this externalized, you know, very abstracted bit of silicon out there somewhere in the desert, you know. And it kind of ties in with the problems of disembodiment. You know, it's weird to talk about that in the context of the podcast about sexual exploitation industries, but
it relates.
Yeah, like guys are inventing these, you know, sort of like little AI bot girlfriends and then abusing them, right?
They are,
threatening
it's
to
a huge
delete
thing
them,
now.
talking, you know, saying terrible things to them, listening to them beg to be treated like, you know, people.
Also, I have to say as well, they actually share them begging or the abusive text like trophies. So it's almost like game hunting for them. So they've made this virtual prey, and then they're just ritually abusing it, and then going, "Oh, see what I made her do." And you know, the thing is, that is the antithesis of training someone to be empathic. That's training someone to be sociopathic or psychopathic. I'd say sociopathic because like psychopaths are born, sociopaths are made. But you know, but it's like, that's, you know, essentially if a guy's using that in his formative years, so when your brain is still kind of, you know, forming, and that's your social circle, and that's your only social circle, and you don't have any mitigating influences, and it's just a rabbit hole of this stuff because, you know, the algorithm will show you more of the same, then you may lose the window for you developing your empathy. And that's actually really dangerous for a society that already has a male sexual violence problem. I think it could be a catalyst for something much worse. And obviously the people who are, pro this will be like, oh, well, it's just a way of them getting their, frustrations out. It's like, not if they're doing this all the time and they're seeing it as a laugh and, they're making new ones to abuse.
Well,
like to them,
or worse.
Or
So
worse.
tired of that argument.
Escalation,
I'm so done engaging with that argument of this is going to be a ventilation valve. Do we give little girls dolls so that they won't take care of babies? No.
Yeah, exactly.
We know that we give them dolls and they practice taking care of babies and it makes them take care of babies more. If we give a man a baby doll and he does horrific things to it, does it teach him to not do horrific things?
Nope.
No. So that's absurd.
Yeah. It's this
And,
weird male exceptionalism, right? Like somehow they are not going to have normal human responses to stimuli. And if they get their sexual response tied to this, right? It's the same thing as pornography. If you get your sexual response tied to that kind of violence or that kind of power over another human being, well, now you're just in the deepest hole ever, because disentangling those two things is next to impossible.
Yeah.
It can be done in some cases, but very hard.
It takes a lot of therapy. Well, it's also, once neurons that fire together wire together, we know this with hooked up and tied down, the neurobiological consequences of sadomasochism, where if you are engaging in, violence or fear-based play, anything like that, where you're, basically doing anything other than transient and trifling, the neurons for fear, sex, and violence wire together. And so when we know the brain is actually much more plastic than we originally thought, and it's constantly dynamically rewiring itself, for common parlance. So actually your environment matters a lot more, and what you're putting into your brain matters a lot more than we previously thought. And that's from, that's reported by Sapolsky, who's actually one of the, the leading lights of, understanding this stuff. So it's, this is why we need to be really careful. And I do, like, genuinely, I do worry about men growing up now just being animals in suits, because if they end up not empathizing, not seeing women as fully human, seeing them as objects to do things to, they have no chance of a proper relationship unless they get rid of that shit. And women have no chance of being away from sexual violence if they're in their midst. Yeah, exactly.
Well, and everything you're saying, Victoria, and we're studying it. You have all of this wonderful, scientific study information that we're studying it now, but everything that you're describing, I think that we've known for a long, long time. And I think that this is how patriarchy works, right? Like, they know that this is a mind control device. That's how it works. This is domestication, right? We know how to train dogs. We know how to train horses. We know how to train humans. And they do it because it works. And there was something else about that I...
Well, it also does kind of tie into the whole Roman Empire thing: keep them entertained, keep them fed, and they don't really care what the consequences are.
Bread and circus?
Because, bread and circuses. Thank you. Yeah, exactly.
And that was the
so
other
it ties into that.
say. And they're teaching each other too. Pornography as a manual, as a display of abuse that has happened, but also a manual to learn how to do this.
Sure.
And men used to teach each other how to do it one-on-one. And then they developed media, and they did it through writing. They did it through religion. They did it through tablets. And then they got pictures. Every single media device has been pushed forward through pornography. Not just because it's entertainment, but it's an effective manual for how to live in this way. And then, like you're saying, the internet, like what we're seeing in this generation, is like nothing.
Right.
I don't know what to say about it.
But
it's the same thing, just escalated to such a point. What do we do when we have this many young men who have been trained in this way? How do we respond to that? I don't know.
Well, I mean, my main theory at the moment is looking at nodes of predation. So the men primarily doing the most harm. So like looking at Andrew Tate and, like, for example, Layla Mickelwait's doing Takedown Pornhub and, is taking down, I think, 95% of the material. Like doing something like that, like taking out the modes of predation and the modes of transmission, that's really important. So you find the ones that are the most predatory, that are doing the most damaging, disseminating it the most, and then you get those. And that's because you can either be on the battlefield and it's like in a war where you've got kind of generals doing the commanding, and then you've got all this little cannon fodder. So all these little dude bros that we encounter online are basically patriarchy's cannon fodder. And then if you're just doing little battles one-on-one, then you're not getting to the generals, you're not getting to the people who are running the show. And so you need to take those out, otherwise the war's never going to be over. So this is why we need to jail the pimps, jail the traffickers, jail the Tates, jail the misogynist dude bros who are disseminating this bullshit. Right. And that's the way we're going to do it, because otherwise, if there's not an example made of them and they're not brought to justice and nothing happens, then it just continues. And it's very much an extremistan I'm going to call it an extremistan economy, but economy isn't the right word, even though it is in some context. But an extremistan economy would be you take out one node and then loads of stuff just kind of collapses, because it's like one node has so much power. And that's the same with Pornhub, because it's linked to kind of loads of different it's linked to loads of different
right. So you take out the in a complex system, and that complex system begins to fray.
Yeah, exactly. But an extremistan system will have that, one node basically orchestrating almost the entirety of that complex system. And when you take it out, a catastrophic event occurs. But to me, that's good catastrophe if you dismantle, the pornography industry or someone who's patriarchal and, full of misogynist bullshit. And this is the thing. We have to bring the criminal element to justice. And if we don't, then they're just going to continue. I also think as well, in order to build up that system, we need to have more women reporting, more women supporting other women reporting. And we also need more people in the world like Laura Richards, the crime analyst. When she was in the forces, she managed to get, serious results. She managed to stop women being murdered. And then, a dude bro cop comes in going, oh, what are you doing, pretty lady? We don't need this. And then the whole fucking cycle starts again. So we need more women in these positions of power who actually give a shit. And so that's how I think we're going to take them out. But it does mean going after the nodes of predation first, because when you take out one of them, that's when you do the most damage to a system that's abusing women and also depriving men of their humanity.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, making an example and doing it on the stage. Merle and I are working on this Sean Combs episode coming up soon. And
oh, amazing.
I'm watching on the edge of my seat, and I'm wondering what kind of story are they going to tell? Because that's what this is. This is telling the country, this is telling the US right now what we're going to do about this.
Literally, the devil himself.
I'm afraid that they're going to show us something ugly, but I'm a cynic.
Yeah.
What'd you say, Esmeé? I'm sorry.
I said the devil himself is on trial, and we will see.
But one of the devils.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing is he's endemic, and it, like I said, they said we're going to take down the most egregious of what's happening right in front of everybody's face. But are they going to start to and then say, no, just kidding?
Yeah. It's also about not stopping at one. It's also about not stopping at one.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, oh, see, we can do our job. We can bring
Where is the Epstein?
You need to keep fucking going. Yeah, you need to keep fucking going. Yeah. And the thing is as well, like I've said about this previously, that when it comes to kind of sexual violence, domestic abuse victims in the States alone, that is trillions in lost potential. So even if you're the most capitalist dude bro, you should actually care about domestic violence, because it means that women can't be as economically active because they've been brutalized by dickhead men.
I think you underestimate the capitalist value of sexual exploitation in the U.S. I think you underestimate how much money they're making doing it the way they're doing.
Yeah, I'm
that's the thing.
Not underestimating it. I know it's fucking terrible, the amount. But Jesus, just this is the thing. It just makes me so angry that
we're dead than alive to them.
God damn.
That's true.
Yeah. And then guys wonder why women are so angry all the time. It's like, well, we'll tell you why we're angry. Yeah. We have multiple reasons. Sit down, I'm getting my soapbox. Yeah. So it's very much like that right now. Like
Do
my
you need a cup
soapbox
of
is from
coffee?
the
Let's get
right.
started here.
Oh.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was doing this calculation in my head the other day about how we don't respond to all of these kinds of violence, right? And anything like the proportion of how much of the violence that there is, how much of the exploitation that there is. And I was thinking about like the numbers. I spent about a year and a half on Twitter, like quoting these statistics from the Department of Justice about the number of women who are sexually assaulted and murdered and the number of 911 calls in the country every year. And the numbers are, I mean, when you add up the murders, the 911 calls for domestic violence are half of all 911 calls in the United States.
Jesus.
And there are 20,000 of them every week. And the sexual assaults are somewhere between, it varies from year to year, but not too much. It hovers in the high 300,000s. So every year, one way or, and this doesn't count women who are in prostitution. This doesn't count women who are homeless and who are being abused in those contexts. It's just these three things, right?
Or married and not talking about it.
Or married and not reporting. Yeah, absolutely.
Or
Which
almost
is legions.
most women who get sexually assaulted.
Yeah, right. Which is legions of women. And I think, you know, you are damaging more than like a US Civil War's worth of dead.
Yeah.
Every year. In this country, and nobody wants to really dedicate what they need to dedicate to get their hands around that.
Yeah.
And
Horrendous.
here we are, all of us, soldiering on anyway.
Mm.
Sometimes I wonder, Esmeé, if the reason that people don't want to have the conversation, because Ellie and I have talked about this for hours and hours, like why is it so hard to get the conversation going? And part of it, you know, like we were talking about the politicians earlier, it's because they're the pimps, they're the Johns. Also, a lot of women, they know their brothers, their
Yeah.
fathers, their husbands.
Yeah.
So nobody wants to talk about it. But then also
then you have to face it. And that's, I mean, it is, as Andrea Dworkin said, you know, it is just the most harrowing thing in the world to realize, right? How much harm is done to women by men. And that almost nobody wants to be a feminist, because facing up to that, you know, requires some therapy. I mean, you can't just look at that and be okay. It takes a little while to get your wind back and then figure out how you're going to begin to approach the world, you know?
And then the other thing is it feels like such a big problem. And we don't know, you know, how do you look into a little girl's eyes? How do you look into a 12-year-old, 10-year-old little girl's eyes and say, I don't know how to stop him from hurting you?
Yeah.
And nobody wants to face that. Nobody wants to go, we don't actually know how to stop this problem.
I mean, that's why I'm here now, because I was like 15, 16, 17, and my friends just kept getting assaulted. I was a little younger than the other girls, and but they would tell me things, and I mean, as everyone knows, it tends to be like, oh, we had a fight, or it was a bad night, or I'm not sure I wanted that, and it takes time to really call it what it was. And then it was pivotal that I had a friend who got really, really into radical feminism, and she would just send me Gail Dines and Andrea Dworkin. And then I was able to say, oh, what these other friends were telling me was not a bad date. That was rape. Right. You know, and just putting all of that together. But I remember even when I wasn't able to put all the puzzle pieces together, still being able on a gut level to feel like how much my friends were hurting and not knowing what to do. And sometimes there were aspects where I did start consulting adults, and then the adults say, oh, but that's like her boyfriend. Like, what are we going to do about that? Like, you know, and then I remember like having the adults let us down. And, and what's difficult to this day is I know a huge number of women who, despite horrific experiences, have carved out a lot of joy and self-determination. I also know some who haven't, and they're not here today. They're not able to speak on here because they're in ongoing crisis.
Thank you.
And I also do this activism because I don't know how to help them. I'm, I'm not trained a lot of the social workers and the psychologists they're either helpless or making it worse, unfortunately, is what I feel like at this stage. But either way, I don't know how to do that. So that's why I'm here doing this.
Yeah.
Really,
So
I've got to thank you for saying that. Thank you so much for saying just that acknowledgement of some of us don't make it.
Mm.
I've known women, I've worked, quote unquote, worked with women. I've been exploited with women who didn't make it. And when I was going through the hardest time, I had lost my house. I was having these PTSD breakdowns that I didn't know that's what it was because I thought sex work was work. And my friends kept telling me, "You're gonna be okay. You're gonna be okay." Sorry, my cat's throwing things off the table. They kept saying, "You're so smart. You've got it. You're fine." And I kept saying to them, "Some people aren't okay. Sometimes it happens that you lose your house and then you lose your job and then you live in your car and then you're not okay." It happened for me that, yeah, I am okay. I'm here 10 years later. I'm really honestly living my middle-aged dream life, and I made it, but they didn't
And we're
know I
very
was
glad
gonna
you're
make
here.
it, and it felt like such a betrayal for them to keep saying, "You're gonna be okay, you're gonna be okay," because they didn't wanna deal with it,
yeah.
Yeah.
and some of us aren't okay.
And like I said, I'm reading the 600-page report. It includes a gigantic survey of over 2,000 women in the industry, except we don't know for sure who the hell filled out this industry because it was snowball technique, online, anonymous, and they funneled it through prostitution advertising sites. A lot of prostitution advertisement, the ad is being run by her PIM. Just to be clear, we just don't know who's behind these accounts. And I was reading this report from a social worker who is, as they were doing the study, was trying to help some of her clients participate, and she said they couldn't do it. Like they cannot sit there and answer 30, 40, 50 questions about their trauma. The women who need to be heard the most. A lot of women can talk about it maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 years later if they are in stable housing, if they have a supportive social, right, etc. But like the women who are still in it, the women who just got out, they will not be in this. And that's the survey concluded. Most women are doing pretty fine. The Johns are very nice men. And this is a study that's now going to be for the next couple of years. They're going to keep throwing at us. The 2,000 women said like there was still concerning stuff in this, even among them. Like 16% don't have health insurance. The actual number is going to be like twice as much countrywide, but there was still concerning stuff even in that rosy version. But just the people, the criminologists in charge of the study, not understanding that how traumatized a population they're dealing with, and that the people who need to be heard the most are the least likely in the format as they drew it up to be able to be heard. That's in contrast to a different study. It's going to take a while till it comes out, but they mostly these researchers, by the way, are interested in condom use because all they care about is, not STIs getting to the regular. Whenever I read the health sections, it's condom use, 20 questions on condom use. But there are a few researchers who get it. There's a different study from a Berlin medical university that is doing not anonymous online snowballed, but interviews with the camera anonymized, but with the camera on, actually talking to a person, having a trained mental health professional on the call, talking to women who have been in and out of the industry for several years, and talking about lifelong impacts, the stuff that nobody wants to talk about. What is it like 10 years later, 20 years later? And so, and even that research is tough. And I know some of the women who undertook that study, and they had, as much as you can have a positive experience sharing your trauma, if there's such a thing, right? That's our podcast as well, right? And it's just, that's why, those of us who've scraped some stability together, that's why we try and speak for those who can't. I know some of those women who can talk do support what we do. Others don't. There's a range of opinions. It's complicated, but
It's like Victoria was saying, there's going to have to be, you mentioned Laura Richards. She's another great hero of mine. I listen to her religiously, and I've learned so much from her podcasts, and I've read her articles, and also Dr. Jess Taylor, these
Yeah.
professional women. But we don't just need these outliers. We need the women who are trained by them. And the women
Yes.
who are trained by them, and it's going to take generations, and we're going to have to just keep grinding away at it, because that's the only way we're going to get this trauma informed. Like you're saying, somebody who's talking to an exited woman or a woman who is in prostitution, if they're coming in with the John stories, with the pimp stories, they're going to cause harm.
Yeah.
And the only way to even get any kind of research is to have people who understand what's going on here.
Yeah. Because Ellie, when you were talking about that study where it's just anonymized and anyone can fill it in, it's like, how is that even accepted as proper research? Like, that just beggars belief to me, because that could be fucking anybody. That could be the
They
pimp, that could
gave
be
it
some
to a-
rando, that could be...
they gave it to
Definitely
brothel.
is the pimps.
Yeah, but that's like, oh my
You don't
God.
think that they
gave it to brothel. There's several in Germany because it's legal. Brothel owner associations,
Jesus
professional.
suffering fuck.
When we say pimp lobby in Germany, that's very literal. So they gave it to them and said, "Can you ask the women in your brothels to fill this out? What results do you think you're going to get?"
Oh my fucking God. I mean,
Aside
come
from,
on.
I mean, it's
Yeah. I mean, essentially, even if a woman does fill it out, she's going to be in a hostage situation, because if she says anything bad, then, she's going to be kicked out and replaced. So obviously she's, if it's a woman filling it out and not the pimp, she's going to be coerced into saying nice things. I mean, we know about this for decades.
Students know how to do this.
Oh my fucking God.
Seriously.
And the German government is taking this research seriously. Is that correct, Ellie?
they paid for it. Taxpayer money paid for 5 years to do this study. There's a lot. I mean, I haven't even gotten into it. There's a lot of lowlights. They say things like, "We are not totally sure if prostitution is harmful to women who are 7, 8, 9 months pregnant. We're not sure. We need more research."
Sure.
Victoria, rephrase your question. The pimps in your government passed this law and they think that it makes sense?
Very
The brothel
funny,
owners
yes.
think that this makes sense?
Yes, quite.
Of course they do.
Yeah, I'm just...
I know.
You can't see, but I've literally got both. I'm double face palming because I just can't.
It does get worse.
But it's all the same men making the same deals.
It is.
I have to mention one more thing, that this is really dark, but again, taxpayer funded study took like 5 years to conduct. It's now going to be likely the basis for future German prostitution policy. It calls sexually exploited minors underage prostitutes.
Oh my God.
It does not call for the legalization, but it is not willing to call it what it actually is, which is child abuse, child rape, exploitation. It can't use those words. We call them underage prostitutes. They even surveyed 16s and 17-year-olds in this survey.
Oh my God.
But we get, when we say the exploitation of adults and minors, it overlaps. It uses the same avenue. Some of the same men want to exploit an adult and a child. They don't care, or they're happy for either. The harm denial around the adult industry feeds teenagers thinking, "Oh, I can do this. This can get me out of poverty. This can get me love. This can get me attention," whatever it is that young people understandably seek. We get called like paranoid and moral panic when we say all the sex work stuff trickles down to children. We understand this.
To pedophilia.
It very clearly does.
All of us understand
every single avenue. That's where it goes.
People out here going, "Oh no, like their Kardashians and their beauty stuff like trickles down to the children," but you don't think the sex tape stuff and the OnlyFans stuff trickles down to the kids?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
And it's like
Neil
Bryan says, the culture does the grooming.
Yeah,
totally. And this is why we need to fight it. So if you want to help us fight this and fight commercial sexual exploitation, go to red.expose.betterworld.org for your last chance to get a ticket. There's multiple different prizes available, including a makeup shoot by yours truly, whether you want your own war paint or a bit of a fancy creature. Yes, it's entirely up to you. So if you want to go to red.expose.betterworld.org, you can see the fabulous radical prizes that we have available, and the winners will be announced June 28th.
And if none of those prizes speak to you, you can donate to us.
Yes, give us money.
Whatever amount. I
Sorry,
would
that's
really
really blasé.
No, but the point is,
Sorry.
if you give us money, then we don't have to do ad breaks in the future, and we can just focus on the topics, which we would like to be doing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes,
This
as
is
much
work.
as I,
Time,
yeah,
right?
it's work. It's fun work. But it still
And-
works. Yeah.
But it
And-
is
Victoria,
work.
a quick question.
And our podcast
How-
is 1 year old, which means there are 24 episodes that you can listen to on any podcast site that you want for free. All the content's out there for free. We have a huge range of topics. We speak to people from all over the world, all around these issues from a critical perspective. But you will see we care about depth and we care about nuance. And there is nuance and gray area here, just not around the subject of whether this is dehumanizing and objectifying. That's where we're very clear.
Yeah. Absolutely. And also, we're not going to shame anyone who's, in the industry or been in the industry. The whole point is that we are critical of the mechanisms of sexual exploitation and commercial sexual exploitation. It's not about being disgust-based or wanting to, harm a woman who's currently in it, for example. I think a lot of the straw manning of us is, oh, you're just really sex negative. You just, you don't, you can't actually fathom that someone could actually enjoy this work, blah blah blah, all of this stuff. It's not true. We are looking at the system, and the whole idea is to be tough on systems and kind on people. So
and we
I
have
think it's
such
really
a beautiful
important.
episode with you, Victoria,
do.
about your body painting. And it was one of we talked about early on, these are very heavy subjects and it gets very dark sometimes, and we want to really highlight the healing aspect. And I think that your episode was one of the first that I listened to that just lifted me up when I hear you talk about embodiment, and we were mentioning disembodiment in regards to AI earlier, and I do think it's all connected, the dissociation that we learn how to go through, and then learning how to get back inside of your body, and the way that you view that and the way that you advocate for women embodying themselves and expressing themselves. And I had a question about your donation. I didn't know this was something that you did over Zoom. Makeup tutorials. Is that something that people can book with you? Is that something,
anyone.
what I'm asking, is that
Anyone
something
in the
I can
world.
book with you?
Of course you can. Absolutely.
And just to
So,
be clear, Victoria is a professional who's worked in Hollywood. She's worked on Maleficent. I hope people know that movie. A lot of the Disney remakes are a bit mad, but that one's amazing with Angelina Jolie. And that's mentioned in the episode. We talk about that. You tell us a little bit from what happens on the set. The Marvel movies, James Bond. So we're talking Hollywood level professional makeup artist.
I was a makeup tutor on Guardians of the Galaxy, and I taught how to do the techniques for the B and C class characters. So that's things like speed, speckling, that's like skin textures, how to cheat in prosthetics, things like that. And then I carried on doing tuition on that afterwards. And then I ended up in it, which was hilarious. So that was quite fun. So it was weird, like 3 weeks later, being on set, being painted with my own makeup techniques. That was quite odd. But it was loads of fun. And, I got to be in a prison riot scene, which I will never, ever forget. So, yeah. And if you do want to see me in it, I am the bold yellow alien being hugged by the giant blue one sleeping next to Chris Pratt. So I can technically say I've slept with Chris Pratt, but I won't, because that would be a bit too much. So yeah, so that's what I was doing before I was cancelled. I mean, it was great. So there we go. So that's what I used to do.
I'm
And
so glad you ended up here.
I am too, because the thing is, okay, it's fun being on set and running away from explosions, because I did my own stunts in Guardians, which was ridiculous. So it's like, oh, can we have someone to run away from explosions? I'm like, yeah, I'll do that, because that sounds like fun. But the thing is, it's not the same as genuinely connecting with women who actually need it and can make a qualitative difference. So it kind of, even though I was really enjoying it and I I really do enjoy kind of doing makeup and turning people into wonderful, beautiful things, there was still a part of me going, but what does this actually mean? And I was kind of on my own search for meaning. You know how like Viktor Frankl had man's search for meaning, I had my own search for meaning. And I feel like actually this is kind of a lot more important than just being on set painting a bunch of half-naked people for a shot. So, you know, I think, you know, I've actually landed in a place where I can make more of a difference rather than just, you know, painting a bunch of celebs. So there you go. But, you know, if that does come back, wonderful, but I'm not going to give this up because, but I also think as well, for the most part, the just a little kind of deep dive quickly into the SFX industry and their kind of views on things. They're all very sex work is work. You don't talk about anything controversial. And the second you say anything controversial online, it's not actually it's not a formal contracted practice. It's all on who you know, what you know, where you are, how you're related to this other person, and who can get you gigs. And if you don't toe the party line, people generally don't book you. So I do know of one makeup artist that if you do so much as one TikTok video of you dancing, she won't hire you because she thinks you're too egotistical. So they have all these little tiny yes, no's. Oh, yes, I'll hire this person. No, I won't hire this person. So it's actually very who you know, what you know, and you have to toe the party line. So I think I just need to create my own work. I am never getting booked again, I swear, because like I'm like I'm against kind of, you know, big pimp. I'm against all this other stuff, and you guys are saying it's fine. And so I doubt I'll get booked on a big movie again. So yeah,
I don't want to put you on the spot, but Esme mentioned earlier when she was talking about her donation to the raffle, she mentioned what that would be worth in the real world. And I'm always trying to get women's value acknowledged. Could you tell us what a Zoom us?
I mean,
And
it
I
depends on
mean
what
me,
you want.
because I want to. But
Yeah,
what
so
you're donating? What would somebody maybe pay for that?
Okay, so if you wanted a full professional thing, it would be about 250. My day rate when I was kind of doing makeup was probably around 400, 450 minimum a day. And commercials can be even more. So I think you can get up to £1,000 for like a couple of hours doing commercial work. So, you know, it wasn't, you know, uber mega bucks, but it was very good when you had it. So yeah, so
These
it's
woman
if you want
hours are
something,
valuable.
yeah. So it's worth it. It's worth about 250. So yes, should you fancy, you know, taking a flutter at winning it? So there we go. Yes.
Very excellent.
But yeah, but it's really odd, kind of how, you know, it's odd how life can have these bizarre twists and turns, and you never know where you're going to end up. But I'm actually very glad I ended up here. So, you know, it's all good in the end. I
mean,
also think as well,
Always
go on,
another
sorry,
door. You know, this
it's
is the
true,
secret
right?
to the world that we're trained not to know, is that there is always another door you can open.
Yeah, and I also think as well, I've accidentally found, you know, at least an interim purpose, because there's again with the disgust-based radical feminist stuff where everything seems to be very puritanical. I remember one criticism I think, Ellie, we had on the body art episode, and they were saying, like, there was one commenter that explicitly thought that body art was just linked to 1970s pornography and transsexualism, and just thought we shouldn't be practicing it. And I'm going, it's 500,000 years old. It doesn't belong to anyone.
Yeah.
You know, like body art's been around for ages. Just because you have one particular strand or iteration that's not being used in a positive sense doesn't mean you should throw the baby out with the bathwater. You know, because, you know, a medium can be used for anything. And now, you know, I'm on a mission as well, just to show people that actually you shouldn't concede aesthetic territory to misogynist dickheads, because that makes you less visible. It means you take up less space. Why would you want to take up less space as someone who really wants to advocate for your own freedom? That seems a bit silly to me. So there we go.
Yeah,
So I
you
have
and
my little
Ellie were talking
purpose.
about this last week when my computer
Yeah.
messed up, and everything you were saying about the kind of horseshoe with purity culture,
Yeah.
it's so interesting to me. And oh, what's her name?
Byler.
The
Mary Bailey, yeah.
by
Oh, she's
yes.
amazing.
Oh, I Katrina turned me on to her. I've been following her social media, and just this, to me, growing up in the fundamentalist cult-like purity culture, you absolutely have hit the nail on the head with that. It's so easy. And it's funny because when I was younger, I rebelled against it, right? I went all the way to the left. I
Mhm.
was punk rock, polyamorous, all of it. And as I got older, I started to understand my conservative aunts and mothers and grandmothers more. And I started
Mhm.
to see, oh, that's what they were warning me against.
Yeah.
That's why they were so closed up. That's why they had these very strict rules that we had to follow. And like you said, like I think it's just a natural human tendency to like, oh, there's danger there. I can't go there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we get restricted and restricted and restricted.
Mhm.
Well, it is.
And we have to learn to move between those spheres, that courage of,
Yeah.
okay, there's danger there, but I'm going to take up space, like you said.
Yeah. Well, it's like the saying goes, courage calls to courage everywhere. And, to paraphrase, sometimes that's covered in paint. So I'm just saying. So
Yeah. Well, it is one of the sort of inborn drives, right, of most animals, to seek pleasure and to seek connection and to seek company of one's peers. And one of the things that happens in sexual exploitation, in most of the mechanisms of patriarchy, including its gender as a power structure and as a mechanism of domination, is that it takes all those things that are beautiful and incredible,
Mhm.
deeply, deeply part of us, the parts of us that are the most connected to not just
And
our bodies,
necessary.
but literally the earth around us, right? The
yeah.
really low down vibrations at which we're all connected, and breaks it, turns it against you, turns it into a weapon, makes it something that
Yes.
hurts to get to, right? Or punish you for seeking it, or let you try to seek it and then punish you for being fool enough to come along on that little journey, right?
Mhm.
And that's the way that those structures keep. We were talking earlier about the society as groomer, right? Or the ways that
Mhm.
these structures or these industries keep replicating each other. But that's one of the basic ways that the domination systems keep re-traumatizing new generations and keeping them
Yeah.
in this loop of confusion and pain. Like, I want the good thing, I want the thing that seems like fun, I want the pleasure that feels completely
Yeah.
natural to me, and
Mhm.
yet something is going to hurt, something is going to break it, someone is going to turn it into a way to enslave you. And
Yeah.
it's the fundamental nasty trick of the whole thing, right? Playing
Well,
us
and
in.
that's what I was saying about the domestication. We know
Right.
how to domesticate other animals. We're using what we need as mammals,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
saying, why did you let them use that to hurt you?
Right.
Mhm. Yeah. It's just always the corruption, the co-option of pleasure as well. Like it's every single time where it's like anything that could, like exactly what you were saying, Esme, exactly what you were saying, Sybil. It's every single time it's like, oh, you like the thing that's nice. Oh yeah, well, we can use it to abuse you. And it's the same with anything. It's the same with it's the abusers as well. It's like the abusive mindset. It's like, the carrot and the stick type thing. It's like, oh, you want some freedom? Well, here you go. Oh no, wait, we're just going to abuse you with this. And this is the thing. And then because you are abused with X, people go, X is the bad thing. So the abuser using the X is the bad thing. Hit the abuser,
Mhm.
don't chastise the woman for wanting X. And like
Yeah.
it's the most simple,
Right.
like to me, it's like the most blindingly obvious thing where it's like
But
you hit the abuser, you know?
that's the
Mhm.
Garden of Eden, isn't it? If you fall.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes.
it's
Yes.
always that's the what you just said. The fall is in the flesh.
Mm,
It's this Cartesian, I think, therefore I am, this disembodied head thing. I'm
Mm.
not part of my body. The AI, the dissociation, the retreat into fantasy. We
Mm.
talked about that on our
yeah.
Neil Gaiman episode.
Mm.
Mm,
And the problem is the body. What is the transhumanist stuff? I mean, it's just, I try not
Body
to know
isn't the
too
problem.
much about what they're talking about, but it's nuts. Oh,
It
this
is.
yeah.
woman
Well,
in Georgia. Oh, this poor woman in Georgia.
Oh, they're
Go on.
Have we
keeping
talked
alive
about that yet?
because she's brain dead but pregnant.
Oh,
Yes.
Yeah,
Jesus. Oh, she gave birth like a 1 pound baby. Like, they were
she
using her
didn't.
decaying
They
body
cut a baby
to.
out of her.
Oh,
Yes.
Jesus. Yeah, and they
And
kept her on life
Life
support as her
support.
body was decaying. Is that right? Until the baby could be like cut out
I
of her.
see
Is
all
that
of
correct?
this as being on
I
a
don't think she's
ritual altar. I see this as just showing us a story of what they can and are and will
due
do
to
to
us.
us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh,
And that
Yeah. There's
poor,
more I could say on that, but I
poor
think I should
baby.
leave it for an episode. Go on. Sorry, Esme.
No, and that poor baby too. I mean, they talk about that as about life, but imagine that baby lives. Just imagine this scenario in which that happens. Rather than gestating in a woman who is actively loving you and caring for you, you are gestating inside
yeah.
of a dead body.
Yeah.
There's no one in there with you. And all babies experience that being in there with you. That's part of what teaches us how to be healthily connected, that experience. And that baby did not have that.
But
No.
this is this necrophilia, this is this cutting off from life. The problem is life. The problem is the body. The problem is the woman.
Yeah.
The problem isn't the thing that is affecting her.
Right.
It's insanity. I mean, it's
It is
literal insanity.
sadist.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I used to be kind of deeply transhumanist when, I had a trans identity, and the idea of the body being something that was imminently and, extensively modifiable or just a sheath was something that really appealed to me. And I found it quite radical. And now I'm looking at it from the other side. And like the misogyny inside it is just so clear and so rampant. And it's essentially like, especially if you kind of add to that this kind of predatory surveillance capitalism. So, for example, if you're going, oh, my body is a sheath, I can modify it however I like. Okay, cool. You have a brand new arm. It's going to give biofeedback to all the companies who've manufactured these parts. They're going to know intimately how you're using your arm, where you're using it, how many times you masturbate, because it's probably going to be your dominant hand, and when you're going to go to sleep. And then after that, they're going to sell that to marketing companies who are then going to sell it to scammers, and they're going to know intimately what you're doing all day. Like, how in any way is that freedom? And then also you're going to have people who could potentially beat you up for your arm, or you're going to have an arm that's not upgradable and someone else gets an upgradable arm, and your body has now become a commodity and it's an arms race to keep up with everybody else who has the new parts. Like, this is so dystopian. It's happening now.
I wonder
sorry, go on, Sybil.
if ubiquitous ritualized sexual abuse isn't the only way to get a mass of people to accept this.
I mean, it could be.
I mean, I just
I
you're
think
describing this, I feel physically ill.
but it's
And
true.
I think that's a
This could
normal
easily happen.
response.
It's already happening with wristwatches, like smartwatches. This is just an extra extension of that. It's happening with phones.
Yeah.
You know,
I know.
it's just an
I
extension of
know.
that.
That's
I
why it
don't
makes me
think
ill,
it's
because I know you're right.
and it doesn't. I don't think it's just ritualized abuse. I think that it's the overwhelm of living in a society that is just so overstimulating to the point you dissociate and just kind of cop out. And you know the system is rigged against you, but you can't quite figure out quite how it's rigged against you. But it's rigged against
Can
you
I
in
not
multiple
call that
different ways.
ritualized abuse, though? If it produces
I wouldn't.
these
I would certainly
consequences, you see
call
what I'm
it.
saying?
I do.
What's the difference?
Well, it's not necessarily ritualized. It's definitely automated, and it's definitely commodified. I don't know if it would come necessarily under ritual, because there's so many different ways, but it's certainly systematic, and it's certainly abusive, because if you look at our stupid ape brains, risen ape brains, we're not equipped to deal with this kind of stimuli 24/7.
Yeah.
We're not dealing. I mean, we haven't been dealing with choice for a long time. If you look at Barry Schwartz's The Paradox of Choice, like if you had 2 or 3 pairs of jeans in the shop, you buy one, they fit, okay, you're done. But now you can go shopping for hundreds and hundreds and thousands of different pairs of jeans from any different manufacturer. And this person's bijou, this person's organic, this person's got mass-produced jeans, and that's just jeans. So you've got that. You've got pensions. You've got schooling. You've got, where do you go to school? Oh, is this degree going to be any good? So you've got
Human
all of that.
brains can't hold this.
No, they
We've
can't.
studied it.
the little machine is filling your, if you're on social media, your mind is being filled with the little bits of everyone else's mind. Like even accessing your own thought, your own voice can get to be pretty hard to do. And you
Well,
combine
going back to your
that kind
Einstein
of like
quote from
not even
earlier.
knowing what it feels like to be in your own head anymore,
Yeah.
right? With a
Aligning with your
sexual
thoughts.
experience, with a sexual culture that has completely removed, whether it's disembodied or embodied, it has completely removed the personal pleasuring connection, the back and forth, right, of play with each other. That's gone, right? You can't even feel the inside of your own head. You don't know what that actually feels like. And yeah, then it's pretty easy to convince you that leaving all of that behind to be a digital servant in the digital universe, sure.
I was
What would I
gonna
want
say,
you to for?
Go on, sorry, Ellie.
I was gonna say earlier, like when the topic of disembodiment, when we started to get into that, it's very relevant on the part of the consumer of whatever it is, and the consumer can be a perpetrator, can be a victim, can be both, depending on what exactly we're talking about, but also on the part of the, well, if it's in the sex industry context of the woman, like just the fact that, like I mean, this is not news, but the internet has been such a boon to the sexual exploitation industry, and in part it helps because you can convince her that it's a good deal. That's what when people think of trafficking, they always think she's put in a white van, like she's kidnapped. That's how we do trafficking. But actually, most trafficking, I think, always has been and still is, and easier now with the internet, been about trying to convince her that it's a good deal, because that's how you can control any type of victim of intimate abuse or sexual abuse or commercialized abuse. If you can convince them this is better than what came before, and with like OnlyFans and so-called cam girling, which is a bizarre word anyway, convincing a woman it's not that bad because it's seemingly disembodied at first, because there's a screen between you and the consumer. I think you're having a much easier time convincing women that is a good deal, that is relatively, it's not harmless. We all know that, but that's different from now meet this guy in person. Now do it on the screen and meet him in person, that like quickly, one slides into the other.
We also have Romeo pimps, don't you, as well?
Oh, this overlaps with the Romeo pimp phenomenon anyway. So it can start with the guy goes, can I get photos of you? And in a much better, different, safe world, making tasteful, humanizing, erotic photos for your partner would not be a problem. But this is not this world. So this world, you can start with, can I appreciate your body, like, and I, sometimes we're apart, and can I, and then that can slide into he's starting to share that with others. She doesn't know what he's doing. Like, men do use it as trophies. They use it for profit all the time. Like,
they use it as trading cards, Ellie. There's like platforms where they're using
and
like
teenage boys do that. Teenage girls, and then that can slide into, like, you could model, you could do this, and like. And then, that's the Romeo tactic. It's not overnight. It's like once you have the connection established, and then you ease. It is not always that way, but it's often easing it into. And the digital platforms are just such a gift. And they've been doing it for thousands of years. So I'm sure the method of, like, taking a woman to a dodgy bar and then telling her to go home with someone, I'm sure that's still happening. And unfortunately, that can work as well. But there's what's different now. This is what shocked me recently. I believe it is Spielberg's daughter. So we're talking about a billionaire's daughter who is now in pornography.
Yeah.
And what is new now is that there is, as far as I can ascertain, we did not used to have such big phenomenon of middle, and sometimes, not as a mass phenomenon, but sometimes even upper class women.
Yeah.
Like, I think Kate Nash is doing OnlyFans. I don't know what exactly she's doing. I don't want to look at that. Yeah. But we're talking about successful, famous women with options, and they're being told that there's something there for self-expression, power, like something beneficial to them. That is a new extreme that I'm still trying to sort out in my mind.
Yeah, I have to say that with Kate Nash, just to clarify, Kate Nash wasn't able to pay her bills because the music industry doesn't pay artists very much anymore, and that's why she went on OnlyFans. And she's like, "Oh, now my children can have Christmas presents because of photos of my
What?
bum." Yeah,
I
the
did.
music industry is
Okay.
paying so little. That's why she turned to
Kate Nash
OnlyFans.
is super,
Kate
like
Nash,
super
yeah,
famous. That is
yeah,
in Britain anyway,
and she wasn't making
and
enough money
Germany.
to pay her bills.
I
Yeah,
didn't realize
It-
that.
yeah.
But
If that doesn't show
there's
you,
always been an
like,
overlap with female
yeah,
artists,
Yes.
with
yeah,
musicians, theater. I mean, as far back as they've allowed us to be in the arts,
Yeah.
yeah, sorry,
you have
especially
to
with
pay your
ballet, things
bills.
like that. Yeah, so
Yes.
I was just about to say, if that doesn't show you kind of how artists are disrespected and the cost of living crisis, I mean, I don't know what does. The
Mhm.
fact that someone like Kate Nash has to go on OnlyFans, and she
And
has
that
said,
is
like,
terrible. And oh,
yeah,
sorry.
no, it's fine. I'm just saying again, I'm, tough on systems, kind on people. I'm not placing any blame on her.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah. And obviously I don't know. I mean, I'm assuming, and I assume that's the thing. Like as an outside, you don't always know what's happening in her life, financially,
yeah, exactly.
emotionally, what she's been through, which is why I would generally withhold judgment. I was just surprised to hear that a billionaire's daughter is
Yes,
doing
absolutely.
pornography. That
Yes.
is, I've never heard that before. So, and that's how we can understand it. Can economy is essential to sexual exploitation, but it's clearly not the only pillar. And
Yeah.
that's why the lefty men going, oh, just your prostitution abolition project, wait till we've abolished capitalism, whatever that means. Not like they actually have a plan.
Not like it's not the heart of
Like,
capitalism.
But
God.
they always go,
Right.
wait until then. But they don't actually want to change any of the other conditions. So they just
Of course
they
they
want to
do.
do sexual mutual aid or all that crap that they've come up with. So
But
and,
you
I
know
mean,
what
we
you
know
said about that.
leftist communes, what they're notorious for. So I don't have to say more.
The upper class women who get sucked into this, you said they have options, and they have financial options, sort of. But we all live in a home, right?
Mm.
We all live in a family. We all live in a community of people, and women live in the financial world, but we also live in the real world.
Mhm.
And these billionaire women also live in the real world with these men doing these things.
With people around them who will convince them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the grooming is, it's kind of on a different spectrum. There's the financial spectrum, and we think like, oh, rich white ladies, they're high up on this financial spectrum, but
Sure, but
they
they
live in a
also
different
have
spectrum too.
insecurities, and they also are emotionally abused, and they also are vulnerable to everything
Are
else.
sexually abused.
Yes, absolutely. They're vulnerable to everything else that can make that seem like a very natural direction to go. It's not like all good things only happen.
Obviously, no, that's what
Billionaires'
I was
daughters.
thinking.
I don't know.
Tell
I
me.
mean,
We don't know.
I've watched Ivanka's body language every time her father gets within 3 feet of her, and she goes very stiff. Like, even if he never got his hands on her, she's always been afraid.
Yeah.
He's talked about her in ways that if I had
it's
a
so
male
good.
relative talk like that about me, I would cut off contact. So
Yeah.
Right. I mean, there is no woman who is safe from the conditions, right?
No.
From the experiences.
The other, I think maybe the side note as well is that the women who are kind of, high up with all the money already, they may buy in to the rebellion myth and doing something that they just don't think they should, quote unquote, should be doing. And
like
then so they've got
class
the idea,
traitor in a good way.
yeah, that kind of thing. And so the idea of like, they want to do something bad, and so they think that's the thing that's going to be kind of the stereotype of the bad girl sometimes. So you
And
get
it's
that
like-
too, and it's sold to them that way. It's sold to them as rebellion. It's like, oh, your dad doesn't want you to be doing this. Like, no respectable woman would do this, so why don't you do this? Like, it's a way of getting back on your family or whatever. Like I do know of a couple of women who, they left the sex trade and they were quite, their families were quite well to do, and it basically what was said to them was like, oh, no upper middle class woman would do that with any respect for themselves, that kind of thing. So they thought it was rebellion to them, and I'm like, well, that's for fuck's sake.
Yeah,
so
that does happen.
That's how it, yeah. So that's how it's sold to them.
Victoria, we've talked about this siphoning off. You've talked about the siphoning off of women who are sexually curious or adventurous or like you say, rebellious, or maybe
Yeah.
coming from a rigid area. And again, that horseshoe coming from the left, right. And I've also heard you mention siphoning off of neurodivergent or impulse or stimulus seeking type
Yeah.
young women into this. It's
Yes.
it's like a free love, sexual liberation narrative, right?
Yes.
I'd like to hear you talk more about that.
Absolutely. Sure. Yeah. I mean, when I was in the fetish scene, I saw there was a massive overrepresentation of neurodivergent women. And so if you're someone who's high IQ, curious, but you're socially a bit vulnerable, and you go into that scene, of course they're going to start off, going, oh, it's so great for you to be here, oh, type thing. And there's like love bombing that can happen, but there's also a lot of trauma training and breaking that can happen really quickly as well.
Mhm,
And so you get
mhm,
women with poor impulse control. Usually they've had sexual abuse beforehand. And so
mhm.
they come in pre-groomed. So they come in being kind of hypersexual or wanting to be hypersexual. And that's then sold to them as liberation. And talking about your kinks is seen as liberation. And there's no value judgment placed on any kink at all that you
And
could have.
healing.
And yeah. And I've just seen women traumatized so badly, and there was women were coming to me because they were genuinely fearing for their lives at one point, and I was trying to keep one woman safe. And the number of men who have gone after vulnerable women and said, oh, I don't want to use safe words, I don't want you to use safe words. So it's just abuse, and they're clouding this, anything you want to do with that's abusive in any way with a neurodivergent or a vulnerable woman can easily be clouded into a kink. And one example I use is, say, for example, you've got someone who's sadistic. If he was just having a conversation with someone in, oh, I don't know, a normal setting, and he suddenly goes, oh, I'd like to beat somebody until half their body is black, someone would go, Jesus suffering fuck, you're a bad human being. However, if he's in a fetish club and, dressed up in latex and it's like the context is different, and he goes, oh yeah, my kink is like really hard sadism, apparently everyone's fine with it. Because you've clouded it into a kink, and it's like, oh, and of course you have, you have entitlement to get your rocks off. Of course, every human's a sexual person, so therefore it'd be terrible if you weren't able to indulge your kinks. Of course, you have to be sexually liberated, not thinking
It just so
about
happens we have
damage.
this
Don't have a right
22-year-old who
Sorry, if you're,
will
I'm
let you
really
do
sorry.
it.
I couldn't pick up on what you were saying. So, Sybil Joe, if you go first, and then if Esme goes second, I can.
I
Sorry,
said,
go
and
Sybil
it
Joe.
just so happens that we have a 22-year-old
Yeah,
who
exactly. Well,
is
sometimes they're even younger.
willing to
Like
let you do that. Yeah, I
yeah,
know.
the age of entry into fetish clubs in the UK is 18 most of the time, and oftentimes they just go in younger. So you can sometimes get 14-year-olds at the club who've either gone in with fake ID, or they don't check ID at the door and they're just covered in latex and heavy makeup, and no one checks. And if they do check and it's a fake ID, they're just going to let them in anyway, because it's not to do with, oh, you've got a fake ID, you're not coming in. Oh, you showed us a piece of plastic. We have done our due diligence. Whatever happens now is your responsibility. And there's just like, people keep saying there's safeguards, and there's not, especially for vulnerable women who think, like, especially like a very autistic woman. If she goes in, like, kink is meant to have rules, right? So it's meant to be, oh, well, you have a
Yes.
safe word and you can say no. And you have to be invited into a scene. And if someone invites you to play, you say no or yes, depending on what you want to do, and you call the shots. I'm really sorry,
And
but if
then you
there's
get in that room.
yeah. And also if there's like, I'm sorry, but if there's like this tiny, like, slip of a woman and there's this 6'2" hulking great brute over her who's just, wanting to beat 7 sorts of crap out of her, she's going to be frightened to say no. That was me once upon a time.
Yeah.
And like people just assume that there's a level playing field, and there really isn't. So there could be a sub who's had 7 sorts of crap knocked out of her, who's like blooded and crying, and then people will be like, oh, she should have used a safe word. It wouldn't have fucking mattered. It wouldn't have mattered. And so there's this whole thing with victim blaming, and now there's a push, even in some kink-friendly psychotherapeutic practices, which cater to a lot of neurodivergent women, about playing without safe words and playing beyond boundaries. So now it's just getting into very, very thinly veiled rape, brutal rape sometimes. And that's not the same as someone who is a bit novelty driven, a bit curious, who may want to experience new sensations, who then can go into a place that's genuinely safe, because they don't police for predators. They never do. It's security theatre. So I've said this previously in episodes, but the person who raped me, they were back in 2 months. I was publicly raped in front of 300 people. 300 people. And he was just let back in. And so that this whole security theatre thing really is security theatre. And when I say I'm speaking from experience, I'm speaking from seriously bitter experience. And there's no way I'd go back to that club. And I've just seen so many like ADHD, autistic women, women with mental health conditions, women who are cutting and self-harming. Like cutting can be eroticized as well. And so you get more and more abused women going in pre-groomed into the scene. The guys are watching more and more violent pornography, doing worse and worse things to the women. The women are then blamed for not using their safe words or not being careful. And people go, oh, you can't trust this woman to play with. And then so the blame gets placed on her. And then if anything does happen, the guy's back in 2 months. There are a couple of much smaller fetish clubs, again, I'm not going to name names, who seem to care about predation. I would say, sadly, that is an exception that proves the rule. And I have to say, like, even from my own experience, it's got worse since I left, about 5 years back. I know it's gotten worse from the stories these women have told me. And again, I'm not judging women for being curious. I'm not judging women for wanting to try something different. I am judging the predatory men who are going into this scene to break and abuse women, and they know they can get away with it because she's either neurodivergent or ADHD, or she has a troubled history, or she's got mental health problems, so no one will believe her if she speaks up anyway. And the thing is, there is a revolving door of women like this who come into the scene, and the guys will always look and say fresh meat. If you go in, you are fresh meat to these predators. And the other thing as well is that the truly sadistic and misogynistic doms, because male dom is especially a misogynistic territory, they genuinely believe women are inferior, and they believe women were put on earth to take pain and take abuse. And they will joke among themselves that they think women are inferior. They'll just literally, like, they'll be in the clubs talking about it.
Victoria, I know everything.
Right.
Oh, I think there's a comment. Hang on.
Cool. Oh yes, we've gotten a comment. I'll take.
Oh right. Oh no. Cool. Yeah. Oh. Kate Nash launches OnlyFans campaign to raise funds for tour. Oh, thank you, Nick. Yeah. So I was right.
Oh my.
Yeah. Yeah. I was right.
Everything you're describing, I've seen in different kinds of scenes, not those kinds of clubs, but in other contexts. And I was just today re-listening to our episode on non-state torture with Linda McDonald and Jean Sarson. Am I pronouncing that right?
Jean Sarson, yeah.
Jean Sarson, yeah. And it just, I have to re-listen to our episodes because they're so dense and there's so much great information. And also, I think Wendy was talking about last week, you cannot consent to torture. This whole question of consent, this whole, I'm tired of that argument.
Yes. Also, I have to say, in the UK, you cannot legally consent to anything other than transient and trifling. So that means something that doesn't leave bruises or kind of deep marks. Like, you cannot consent to anything more than transient and trifling, because after that, it's assault, actual bodily harm, grievous bodily harm. But because of the kinkwashing of the constabulary, because of the kinkwashing of the constabulary, so they're trained about like gender and that kind of stuff, but also BDSM along with gender. It's kinkwashed and sleazewashed. So they're saying, oh, well, if someone's practicing BDSM, you can't say that it's you can't say that this is something that's unlawful. You can't, like, it's best not to arrest them. And so even when they're committing actual bodily harm, their excuse will be, oh, she consented to it. So even though it's illegal, even though you can't legally consent, even though the women generally have what I would call diminished mental capacity, not in a judgmental way, but because if you have trauma, if you have ADHD, if you have autism, that is in that respect a diminished mental capacity or some kind of difference in learning. And so, so the law, even though it should be there to protect women, the spirit of the law, as in how it's actually enforced, is there in favor of the predatory men. And so the men get away with it all the time and say that she's consented. And there's been some really severe cases where, there's been, like beatings, like deep bite marks, burning, and they've gone, oh yeah, she just consented. And you don't want to look back on the history of all of it. It's very, very grim. But that's the smokescreen. That's the kink washing smokescreen that the guys will hide behind under this idea of like body liberation, bodily choice, free sexuality, and they use it as a smokescreen to abuse women. And yeah, that's why we do the work that we do. So if you do want to help us, you need to go to redlightexpose.betterworld.org to get a ticket or 3 of these fabulous prizes that we have, and winners will be announced June 28th. You can win anything from books, art, self-care experiences, or even a makeup session from yours truly. So get your tickets now. So go to redlightexpose.betterworld.org, and if you don't want a ticket, then pass this link on to a friend.
Because we're not just a random live stream, we're a podcast. And well, we hope to do more of these live streams because I do feel like when we do it off the cuff, we find these, nooks and crannies that sometimes in the planned versions we might not get into. New things happen. And I love that we've had guests on here too. So Esmeé, if you want to join us again in the future, please do. And also we are close to the 2-hour mark. Anyone who is like exhausted and wants to log off are free, but I can still go for another half hour or so if anyone wants to do that.
To stay.
I'm happy to stay. Yeah. And I wanted to connect. I know, Sybil Jo, you wanted to say some things earlier. I don't want to skip over that, but
sorry, Sybil Jo.
She's just left a note that she's had to step away for just a second.
Oh, she's got to get her charger. Okay, no worries.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no worries.
No worries.
I could jump in for a second and say that as I'm listening to all of these details of how these, we call structures. Structures are really a combination of traditions and law. How these structures keep replicating themselves, how they come down to these incredibly singular experiences of damage and torture and abuse and exploitation, is that in each of these things, each of these times, the response, you'll be okay soon, or you should have used your safe word, or whatever the glib response is the thing that deepens the trauma, because it leaves a woman abandoned in it. Part of what creates trauma for people is that a bad thing happens to you, and then the community says nothing happens to you.
Yeah.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
The way that the law works, the way that the police are trained, the way that these scenes work, the way that these industries function, the way that the law works in general, creates a situation in which women are always abandoned ahead of time by the very communities in which we live. So everything happens to us is easily dismissed. And the thing that's interesting in that, part of the reason that it creates that trauma, because one of my other hobbies is thinking a great deal about prehistory, is that that's how you got rid of the bad people once upon a time, right? If your community wasn't really into just killing bad people who had caused major problems, you would send them out. Because sending them out, abandoning them to their own devices out there in the woods, meant that, if they were on the European continent, meant that they were going to come across a very large bear or lion or something that they would not have backup when they encountered it, right? Like, it was just good luck to you. So that abandonment by the community is also understood instantly, almost instinctually.
As a death. Yeah.
As a death, as a punishment, right? Yeah. And that's part of the reason that process drives it so far into us.
Yeah, I think you're right. And also, can I just finish this point because it relates directly to Esmeé's and the fact that I've experienced this trauma as well. One of the biggest things traumatically for me was, and it also kind of encouraged me to walk away, so I guess it's a good thing in the long run, is I lost the entire fetish community when I was confronting my abuser and I spoke out about my abuser. Like the fact that I wanted the law involved in any way, I was the bad guy. I lost people I'd known for over 10 years. I lost basically everybody for like multiple reasons. I mean, obviously I was a detransitioner as well, but it's been a life. But
It does
I
tend to
left.
happen that way.
Yeah. So I lost all my, so-called support group. I lost, everyone. They were, also the actual things like victim support and rape crisis charities that are meant to be there to protect you. I knew legally at the time, because we didn't have the Supreme Court ruling, they wouldn't be able to protect me at the time, because my abuser would be able to just follow me in through self-identification. So I didn't have anywhere to go. And when I did have any kind of therapy, it was either the therapist was painfully ill-equipped to deal with the level of complex trauma because I had complex PTSD. And so the therapists would abandon me. So I got abandoned by 10 therapists. It took 10 tries for me to find the therapist I have now. I was abandoned. So I was abandoned by my community, abandoned by therapists, abandoned by victim support, abandoned by, countless people. And it just reaffirmed the trauma and made the trauma. You were so right. It makes the trauma more deeply embedded. And I have to be honest, I'm surprised I'm alive, because when you deal with that level of abandonment on top of multiple other traumas, on top of there being no real mental health help, like there's no mental health up in the UK now unless you go private. We've got 6 psychiatrists, 6 psychologists to every 100,000 people or something in certain areas. Like it's terrifyingly bad,
Everything you're saying, Victoria, is giving me goosebumps, because I had my life didn't fall apart when the horrific things were happening to me. My life fell apart when I started trying to get out of it, and I lost everybody. And like you said, and I said, okay, I've lost everybody. I've lost my home. I've lost this. I'm going to start calling resources, because everybody says you can call these agencies, these government resources, these non-government resources. I was calling everybody. They were sending me to other numbers that went to voicemails, that went to
passing off.
just nonstop. And then the more no I got, the quieter my voice got when I asked.
Yeah. You get worn down. And it should be that no woman feels like that. That, no woman's abandoned. The resources are so poor because of, wealth transfer, read theft, by the ruling classes, that we just don't have any resources left for women anymore. And this is actually why places like, Medusa Rising and Red Light Expose are so important, because even though they're not technically support groups, there are still places where women get to be heard. And the act of being heard is therapeutic in itself, because that person's not going to say, oh, you made it up. Oh, I don't believe you. Oh, I think you're lying, or whatever. Like, there's no, the cynicism isn't there. It's like, this is your story and you need to tell it. Or, you have a voice here and your contribution matters. Because, like, how many times has a woman left either an abusive partner or a pimp or a scene and felt so utterly worthless? And actually these projects where women's voices truly matter, and the amount of healing that can happen just from your voice mattering in a place, and actually having genuine sisterhood is enormous. I think if I hadn't chanced upon, you, Ellie, you, Esmeé, you as well, Sybil Jo, I'm pretty sure I would have left the movement after the introduction I had, and I'm so glad I stuck around to find genuine sisters who actually give a shit and actually care about what I have to say, because I was made to feel like dog shit by like some, prominent people in the movement. And so this is really, I think it's so important that, you're here and you actually allow my voice to matter. So thank you.
Thank you.
No, it's my honor, Victoria.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
And
sorry, you were
that's,
saying, Eddie.
That's one of our missions on that podcast. So it's questioning orthodoxies, and that can be religious, that can be mainstream. But that also says, let's look at feminism. What, if I can speak for, I think we would all class ourselves in that realm.
Yeah.
Or maybe even radical feminist or radical feminist tendencies. But that's not a perfect movement. There's some deep flaws, dynamics, and people. For various reasons, naming the people is not an option, but we can discuss the characteristics to help others spot it. Because any political movement has careerists, opportunists, people who claim to be safe havens for others with trauma who really are not.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be that they, like the men do, they become rapists and pimps. There's other ways to harm people that are still significant. And there's a lot of, I've now had this, we talked about it at Women Create, Victoria, right?
Yes, aesthetic
had-
policing, yeah.
And an entire panel. Yeah, please tell people what Women Create is for context.
Sure, yes. So Women Create is the world's first ever event for cancelled female and feminist artists and art activists from across the political spectrum, because women's creativity and bodily autonomy is being censored left, right and centre, and we needed a space for that and for women to come together and settle their differences, whether they were radical feminists, whether they're a bit more lib and so on. And it was also a place for any issues in the movement to be ironed out. So we had a panel on topless activism, for example, and we also had one where Ellie was on, which was aesthetic policing, survivorship and self-expression. And it was one of the most successful panels we had. So Ellie, tell us more about what you said on the panel, because you were brilliant.
Oh, thank you. It's that I hope I can speak for all of us. I think we've all drawn deeply from the well of radical feminism and found it nourishing. But when it becomes an orthodoxy, we heard at Women Create from women who were attacked for having sons, for being mothers of sons.
Yeah.
Women attacked for wearing makeup.
Mm-hmm.
We're not talking women who have a toxic makeup brand shilling for toxic makeup brand at the event. We're just wearing makeup.
Yeah.
Because of an aesthetic preference or habit or whatever. Women who are, women out there risking their lives, fighting the sex industry, fighting Islamism or whatever it is, but the way that their face looks, that or the skirt that they wear, that's what's then going to be discussed in the comment section by other women who call themselves radical feminists. Because it's always easier to do tone policing, aesthetic policing, a purity spiraling in your teeny tiny circle than look at the, big people. Look at the, oh my gosh, now the who owns OnlyFans? I have like their faces are coming to me, but not the names.
I know the guys.
Radvinsky and
I can't remember the other guy though. Radvinsky though.
Leonette Radvinsky and Tim Stokely. Instead of looking at those guys, who, by the way, actually, if you want to go aesthetic policing, they all look like creepy bros, by the way. They do. Mm-hmm. So,
there is a type.
It's like they have this like dead look in their eye. I don't believe in like reading body language, but sometimes with these types of men, I'm like,
you can tell. Yeah. And it's horrible when it falls into prescriptivism, because that fractures the movement. Not only does it fracture the movement, it frightens the women who are coming in new, who could be scared. They could have recently exited prostitution. They're gung-ho. They really want to do the work. And you were telling me as well, Ellie, about they may not have thrown away all the clothes from their time in the sex trade. And then the radical feminists are just like, they're dealing and policing what they wear, as opposed to listening to what they're saying. Oh, what other type of person does that? Oh, dude bros who don't want to listen to women at all. Hello, horseshoe theory, where you've got, the radical feminist and misogynist joining up at the back, even though your intentions are markedly different, the behavior's the same. Like, please.
Is it? I kind of think of it as like dominance behavior in any situation I'm in, whether I'm at work or with my kids out in public or at a family dinner, whatever. Like, I notice when people want to assert themselves in a hierarchy. And I don't know. It gets complicated when, we're talking about the patriarchy, and that's the most pressing issue.
Yeah, but I think as well,
I
can
tend to like
within a patriarchy. Like, you can get, just because something is female-led or female-owned doesn't mean it's working for women.
Because, but women enact these behaviors too, because they work.
Yes, of course. Yeah, they do. It's a
and we
dominant
have to
behavior,
just be on constant watch.
Well, they work they work for the moment. They work if what you're
Yeah.
interested in is status. They work if what you're interested in is a thing, right? A territory, a property, a brand.
A career.
But they don't work if what you're interested in is movement and, to
This
fall back
big
on
picture.
world
Mhm.
building, right? This is it,
Yes.
those breaks in trust, those experiences shatter the possibility of coalition around issues. When we're talking
Mhm.
about women's issues, we're talking about damage that is done to women, right?
Mhm.
Women's issues are all damage. They're all harm,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They're not complaints. They're not just a lack of access to the things that I want in life. Women's issues are about damage, harm, death, right?
Mhm.
And so building coalition in order to push back against those things is probably the best way that we're ever going to be able to push back against those things. Except for those times when I'm very frustrated and I say to my person, you could just randomly pick every fourth man on the planet, throw him in prison, and fix a lot of stuff.
I mean, yeah.
And he looks at me and says, honey, that's a little.
Prison is nice.
I'm not saying I should be in charge of the utopia. I am obviously not that person, but I'm just saying. But coalitions are also built on trust, right? If two groups that basically work on different things or have different approaches to those things want to combine their energy, they're going to have to really know that when they're not working together at exactly the same time, nobody's going to get in anybody's way, right?
Yeah.
Like coalitions don't
Mhm.
have to be total. They don't have to be everybody on side, but where they are working, they have to trust each other as sort of cooperative, right? Because a movement is supposed to move. It is supposed to flow. It is supposed to be
Mhm.
an action, as Andrea Dworkin said, to go back to the beginning, Joe.
Or it's
It is
stagnant.
supposed to be an action. It is supposed to be an alive thing. And if you're tone policing, if you're style policing, if you're cutting women out because they're not meeting your particular standards right now, right? Then you are creating a territory and a property. You are creating a thing that can only hold still, and a thing that can only hold still can only break down. That's not how you win.
Yep.
That's not how you win history.
Yeah.
That's how you win a capitalist game. That's how
Mhm.
you win a dominator's game, right? But that is not how you win history.
No. You're absolutely right. And also, you need new information in a system, otherwise it tends towards disorder.
Absolutely.
Basic
New
premise.
centers of coherence. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
And this is the thing as well. Like, if you don't have a movement, you have a stagnant. It's just full stagnation.
Yeah.
So you don't want that.
Yes.
And
Go on, sorry, Ellen. Oh, sorry, Joe. Still Joe, sorry.
no, finished. I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying that this is why, putting aside these differences is really important. And even if it's doing parallel work where it's like, look, you guys aren't doing the same work we are, that's totally fine. You guys work here, we'll work here, that's all good. And we can tolerate our differences. And actually, one of the things I did for Women Create International was, I platformed Nordic Model Now, but there were people, like, I welcome women who've exited the sex trade who may have differing views on whether the Nordic model works or not. You know why? Because I want to hear what they have to say. I want to know what their experiences are. I'm not going to judge them or shame them. They are invited because, I want to know about their experience, and I want to know what nuances they're bringing to the table, because if I've missed something, I want to know.
Yeah.
And it's important to have their fucking voices there. And if you're just kind
Yeah.
of beating them going, no, you're the wrong type of woman, you're the wrong type of feminist, get out, what's going to happen? Everyone's going to start bleating the same. There's no new original ideas. It all becomes recursive and navel gazing, and then totally ineffective. Then the whole thing just collapses like a blancmange in the cupboard. So just stop it.
And like Esmeé was saying, it has to do with, when I said it works, you're right. It works for a specific goal that an individual is trying to get, but it doesn't work for the big picture. But
Yep.
it's difficult for me because I think of it as a personal development thing too. I mean, you meet people who, again, we're acknowledging that this dominance hierarchy, historically, we've watched it rise and fall and rise and fall. We're going into a very dark time right now, and
Yeah.
the boys are being trained by the men, and the boys are training the girls, and
It is not good.
We're gonna have problems. Like coming from a dysfunctional family, you don't break the cycle, you soften the cycle. And we're unlearning these behaviors, and we're trying to connect. There's going to be a lot of gray area. There's going to be a lot of time where you go like, I don't know exactly what point I'm getting to, but just this difficulty, and it's not always so clear cut as, yes, there are some people who are just bad actors and just predatory, and I think you develop a sense, and when you develop a leadership, the leadership has a sense of spotting that pretty quickly. But then there's these gray areas of how do we develop as a community, fostering horizontal
Yeah.
communication,
I think we
fostering
can,
forgiveness.
help people, Joe,
Where
by
does the line of forgiveness
Yeah.
versus ostracization? We have to
Yeah.
build
Well,
everything
I
from
think that's
scratch. It's so
yeah.
unfair.
I think it's a how many grains make a heap argument. It's like you may not know where the heap happens, but you can tell what a heap is. So it's about holistically looking at patterns of behavior over time
I like that.
and going, oh, okay, cool, yeah, fine, okay, yeah, I've got your number. And it's the other kind of iteration of it is the philosopher's beard argument. You know where there's a beard and there's not a beard. So it's that kind of thing. And also, not every single not every single system or structure is going to be the same. And also, I would urge anyone starting a radical feminist or radical materialist feminist endeavor to please read The Tyranny of Structurelessness, because if you have something without a leader, usually the very worst of people tend to want to take up that vacuum and the whole thing falls apart. And
Can you
actually
pop that
having
in the comments or
yeah, if
didn't
I can, sure. Yeah, I will do. It's called The Tyranny of Structurelessness. It's an essay by Jo Friedman. She also wrote Trashing as well,
Yeah.
which was trashing the dark side of sisterhood. So if you give me a second, I will have a look and see if I can do that. Yeah, so it's about so the way I work in terms of creating a system, I make sure that if I have a system that needs to work and I need people to fulfill certain roles, everyone knows what their role is. Everyone has status in that role. Everyone has respect within that role. And the roles are modular. So if someone starts off just as a volunteer and she's a really good photographer, okay, cool. Would you like to be a part of the next Women Create exhibition? I've got someone who's also a photographer apprentice. Do you guys want to go together and make a project? And oh, there's this photography collective over here. Do you want to go with them? They seem really cool. So the whole, so it's, so it's dynamic, it's networking, and also you get things done while also ensuring people can grow and achieve their potential, and they're not stuck in a Dundridge kind of a role,
Right. Webs are
and
built.
Yeah, exactly.
Webs are built.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think Joe, the gray area you're talking about, this sort of like partly being of this movement is coming in and doing a certain amount of personal work. I think we would do well to admit to everyone, especially someone new who's just discovering feminism or just discovering a radical feminism, right? Or an abolitionist feminism in the case of sexual exploitation, that this is hard, right? Like, you're not bad at this because you think it's hard. You're not bad at this because you're confused. This is hard, and it's got a long history, and there's a lot of it, and not everybody agrees. And the work itself, the attempts, the things that we are trying to do are all a heavy lift, right? It's not you. It's not hard for you. It's hard.
And we're struggling too.
Right. We're all,
everybody
right,
in this struggling.
And we're all coming in here with varying degrees of healing under our belt. And we're all turning around and confronting a thing that from top to bottom is designed to harm us.
Mm-hmm.
And so beginning with that, rather than are you doing your feminism right, gives us a ground to start from that will let actual people connect with each other and develop enough trust, sometimes in small groups. I wrote this whole thing about coalition and sisterhood at the very beginning of Medusa Rising that was like, coalition is for doing big work. Sisterhood is for doing healing. Sisterhood is for taking care of each other. Sisterhood is for guiding each other through our learning, right?
Yeah.
But sisterhood and coalition can't really be the same thing because they can't do the same job,
Yeah.
right? And so keeping those a little bit, I mean, this is a long discussion inside of feminism. I was just sort of like thinking about it again the other day.
I'm following you.
Yeah. What?
Oh, I said I'm following.
Oh, okay, cool. But those registers, I guess they're sort of like registers of energy. It helps if we can think about them like that. Like they can harmonize and work together sometimes, but also they have to be their own part of the work. And I think a lot of women come to feminist movement really hoping that what they're going to find here is a safe, welcoming home where they're going to be understood all the time. And the problem for that is that it's full of people. Because women are people and we are complicated and some of us are thorny and some of us are just political assholes, you know? And so finding your way through that is also tricky. And it's hard to remember when what you want is to be enveloped, right? But there's no envelopment because it's a movement and so it's just full of people, you know? I think trying to take a
I'm
little
glad you
patience
said it.
with each
I mean,
other.
People are assholes everywhere.
Yeah,
Right.
but I also
Right.
would argue that, you know, because of the type of work that we do, I think it is important to be as supportive as you can where you can. And if you can't help someone with their trauma, then signpost to someone who can help with their trauma, and also lift up the organizations that do help, you know, like you, my sister, for example, you know, places like that. So it means even if you are doing work that could be re-traumatizing or traumatic, then, you know, there's places to go. And also it can't be kind of hammered home enough. Find your people. Because working with people you get along with, working with sisters you get along with, makes the fight so much easier, rather than being at, you know, loggerheads. So it means that, you know, if there is someone who's being abusive to you, or if there is someone you're rubbing up against, don't do the work with them. Do the work with the people that you can work with. And then if you do need to kind of be around the person who's not great to you, sometimes just make sure you're around people who are really supportive. And, you know, so if, you know, they're at a conference and there's, you know, someone who's been really mean to you at a conference, then just stick with the people who like you and you've got some energy there. You know, it's that kind of thing. And just have each other's backs. Like, have each other's backs. And oh, just a quick one. Nick's popped trashing and the dark side of sisterhood and the tyranny of structurelessness in the comments for us, so everyone can see the articles. Thank you very much, Nick. I appreciate it.
Nick.
Thank you, Nick. Yeah, round of applause for Nick. Woo! Thank you. Yes, saved my job. Thank you. Yes. So yeah, but I do think it's really important to just have that, you know, that genuine sisterhood and being able to work with women who get to you, because not everyone will. And once you do find it, I mean, it's like with, you know, Esmeé, with like what we've been doing, and Ellie and Silverjoe, what we've been doing together, you know, ideas just flow. Like when you're with the right people who get you,
That's
ideas
how it
keep
works.
flowing. And there's this synergy, and you don't feel drained afterwards. You feel like, oh shit, I've got all of these ideas, and we can do this, and we can do that, and we can have this episode, and we can do this, and we can do that. And it's that thing. So like, it's, so anger's an energy, but also so is, you know, sisterhood when done right is also an energy, you know?
Yeah, resonance is essential, right? It's how we know that we're
Yeah.
connected. And when you're not finding that, that's not that those people are bad or that you're bad at what you're doing. It's just that y'all don't belong together. And that's okay. You know, it has to be okay.
Yeah, it's like, you know, an orchestra or a choir, you can have a, you know, you can have harmony or you can have cacophony. Pick one.
But like you said, a lot of people come to the movement being freshly traumatized. I know I did. And feeling that like, I need that sisterhood. And what you just said about separating the sisterhood and coalition, and understanding that both roles need to be met. Some people are really good at one. I'm good at the sisterhood. I'm good at one-on-one people. I just connect with the people that I meet. But
Yeah.
And that's a gift.
when people come in freshly traumatized, we have this black and white thinking, right? We have this victim perpetrator thinking, and it takes a long time for that to, so it's so easy to take things personally and go, oh, you hate me. I thought you were going to be my friend. Now you hate me. And
yeah, there were organizations back in the day, I have heard tell, where they would sort of go in phases, right? Or some women were better at caring for each other. They had more residents, right? But they were all working in the same organization, and these women had more residents over here. And they could separate a little bit from time to time to go take care of each other and then come back in. And we live in this era where everything's going at us all the time, and there's no opportunity to process. But they literally took a minute to go take a beat to process, right? Just let it rest for a second.
And that
And
is
then-
actually something that I've loved working with Red Light Expose. And if any chance I get to sing Ellie Arrow's praises, how insistent they are. We have so many hosts and we have so many guests, and we get to take turns, and they're always reinforcing, hey, if you need to take some personal time, hey, everybody needs to blank out for a little while. No
Right.
pressure. Let's check in. And just having that awareness that we can carry the load.
No, exactly. Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. I will constantly sing Ellie's praises because you're brilliant, Ellie. Like, you really are.
Oh, thank you guys.
Yeah, well, it's really
She's
obvious
our
that you care
unsung
as well.
hero.
Well, I feel like, you can do the sisterhood and you can do the coalition. It's same with you, Esmeé. Like, you can do both. It's really, like, to me, that's massively important that you have leaders that can do that. Like pinnacles who can do that. It's very it can be very lonely otherwise, I think, especially for people new to the fight.
Yeah.
And having little beacons is important, I think.
Also, Victoria, you're fantastic at that. I mean, you're
Oh,
talking about them, but I mean, you're sitting here and you're like plugging the fundraiser. By the way, we're
Yes.
doing a raffle right now,
In addition to the world's greatest promoter,
and then clicking into
terrific friend.
the personal trauma stories, and you bridge that gap beautifully. I'm in awe.
Oh, thank you. No, I'm just
Well, don't get
re-greasing
us
my compare
wrong.
wheels. Oh, so thank you.
And don't get us wrong. I think we're all also, one of the things about the kind of women who come together to do these sorts of projects is that in one way or another, we're all real happy warriors, but we know where to put that. And it's not at each other. I'm a very happy warrior. Pick a fight with me. Love it. Especially if I'm fully justified.
Oh,
But I know where that goes. I get this Aries moon. It's just like, but I know where it needs to go, and it
that feminine urge to rage with the
trying
patriarch.
to do good. Yeah.
I don't know if anybody reads Mary Daly anymore, but
oh my gosh, I love her.
Yes, everything you're saying, Esmeé, everything you're saying about the anger and the I don't even know how to use her words. If you haven't read her and you like,
she's a
to
world.
go in,
Yes. She's a whole
if you like to
world.
go deep, but using this synergy, using what we create together and the rage and all of it. We're brilliant women. I was texting my best friend today about the live stream, and I said, oh, you're going to love Victoria, she's blah, blah, blah. And I said, she's brilliant. And then I said, I overuse that word when I'm talking about the women on this podcast, but I can't think of anything more encompassing.
Yeah. It's magic,
and
right?
it's creating it's literal magic. This is what we've been doing it for a long time. We know how to do it.
Full sisterly creative vibes.
Yes.
Yes. No, I totally agree. And I think that's, it's important, like also creating synergy is also part of the work that we do at Red Light Expose. So if you do want to donate to us, please go to redlightexpose.betterworld.org to buy a raffle ticket where we have 20 fantastic prizes available, including a year subscription from Medusa Rising, a body paint / makeup session from yours truly via Zoom, and even mystery prizes. And if you're so inclined, even a long distance house blessing. So tickets are available until 11:59 June 27th Pacific Standard Time. And you can go to redlightexpose.betterworld.org to get your tickets, or you can give us a one-off donation on the website. And the winners are announced June 28th.
Which is also tomorrow.
Yes. It's the 1 minute to midnight Pacific time is when it closes. And we also have film festival ticket, the biggest North American film festival. You can get a ticket to the digital encore. You'll have 3 days to watch like 20 different films by women filmmakers that are like pre-selected from a range of films. So best of the best. from women from all around the world about women's issues, but also, I mean, women's issues, any issue is a women's issue, and like we can tell the women's story. We can tell this. One of the films highlighted was about a grizzly bear mama and her cubs that they added a previous year. Like, how does a woman tell that story versus a man? How does a woman tell the story of the oceans, tell the story of this city, tell the story of this community, tell the story of this historic practice, whatever it is? Women behind the camera, women in control of the film, which there's not nearly enough of, which is why you need projects like that. So that's really, I mean, I didn't want to like put into our own raffle, but that's, I mean, I want into that encore. So I might just
I want all of our prizes. I didn't even realize I can't afford any of this. But the fact that we're doing it, like I said, 10, 15, 20 years ago, I was not finding this stuff. I'm so excited that we brought it all together. Another prize that we have that I brought up earlier, Mary Byler, Jezebel's Justice.
Yes.
And I hope we're going to get her on the podcast, right?
Yes.
I really hope to be that
Yes.
conversation if we can arrange it. She is so. There's something that resonates with me. I wasn't brought up Amish, but I was brought up in fundamentalist Christian cult, and I was brought up with this idea of Jezebel. And I want to read from her book description for the book that she's donated for our raffle. She said, one of the most frightening stories I heard being preached as a child from the non-existent Amish pulpit was how not to be prideful like Jezebel. Certain ways of making my dress or arranging my hair would bring me into question whether I was like Jezebel. Maybe I am a Jezebel, and maybe I'm not. But who gets to decide that, and what gives them the authority over my body to do so?
Wow.
And I am so excited to talk to her. Her voice is so strong, and coming from where she comes from in such an underrepresented, talking about the voices that don't get heard.
Yeah.
You know, there are so many voices in America that are just swallowed up. And I was called a Jezebel for the first time when I was 8 years old.
What?
Oh, wow.
I put on my grandma's lipstick and some earrings. Me and my little cousin, we were dressing up, and we walked out into the living room. My granddad laughed in this way that I didn't understand what it meant, but it felt not good. Some kind of little chuckle. Y'all look like a couple of Jezebels. And I didn't know what it meant, but I kind of did. And it really is, it's ingrained. It's, again, the culture does the grooming for you.
Yeah. It leaves a
And
kind
it's
of
not
stone.
new.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really excited to talk to her, Mary Byler.
Yes, I mean, we have so many amazing guests that we want to bring on. I think we have a document with like 100 names. The first thing that we will be doing, because we already recorded the episodes, they will be going out all the way, and those will be free. We appreciate a donation because it helps us keep the lights on, but these are free. It is 8 episodes with men in this space, men supporting the efforts, men who have survived the industry, because around 5 to 7% of commercially sexually exploited people are boys and men. So we will be diving into that. But yeah, there's like 100 more people that we would love to get on, and so much to talk about. And but I was gonna, we're now 2 hours and 30 minutes, and I was like, I have like 10 more things to say.
Go for it. Like, I don't think any of us are going anywhere.
I could talk to you forever. We just sit for hours there. Sometimes Ellie and I just call each other so we can do this. We just got to get it out.
Yeah, and Victoria and I do like 4 or 5 hour episodes privately.
Oh my God. I know.
Exactly.
That's true.
Well, I was going to share the first time that I can recall vaguely understanding the concept of prostitution, and it was applied to me, and I must have been like 10, when I was at a like playing with a friend, and I put on a princess dress, but it was for a child younger than me, and like it was too small for me. I had outgrown that size of like a children's costume, and it came with these not mega but like slightly high-heeled children's slippers, and like a little crown, and then like maybe like children's lipstick. So and I just came downstairs to my mom. I was like, "Look, Mom, I'm a princess." And my mom took me aside and said, "If you go on the street like that, men might think they can pay you money to."
What?
I don't know how precise phrasing, and I know she was trying to protect me.
Yeah.
Like, this was not my mom trying to shame me. She was trying to say this is a very short skirt, and there are men out there who are not safe, and but that was, I remember that too. I've never forgotten that experience. Like the idea that
But
an
what
adult
voice
woman.
do you have as a mother?
How do you explain that to it? Like I must have been. I mean,
I
I was a
appreciate
children's
her for
costume.
saying it outright. Like, I don't know. We have to talk to our daughters, right? At some point, we have to have the conversation. Uh,
Yeah.
God,
I would know how to put that, and I know she was. I didn't come away. I don't think I came away like deeply ashamed, but there was a lot going on in my head for a long time after that, and then you pick up from, because like prostitution is in like every other movie, and so even as a kid you're going to see it, even like
yeah.
sometimes even in children's movies there is like, in a pirates movie at the Pirate Bay they have these laughing jolly women, and you kind of
Yeah.
vaguely know what's going
It's
on.
always kind of a wink, wink, nudge, nudge, right? Like,
Yeah,
oh, we're not going
it's
to
always
say it
played as
out
like,
loud,
yeah, it's like
but
played as like cheeky under the
you
table
know.
type. Yeah, oof.
So
Yeah.
And
I remember being quite young and understanding that there is, but not really understanding. Like you understand about half of it. Like you understand, like men desire women and they want to do things with them, and that kind of gives women power, but it's also dangerous, and like
but
just a
also,
very confused
they
space of
might
all
want
of
to
that.
do it to little girls. And
And I might be
I-
seen as one of those women. They're not separate
what
from
does it
me.
mean growing
Yeah.
up as a little girl in a culture? I have had in my family some controversy about whether there was incest abuse or not. And she says there was, and she says there wasn't, and this and that. And I finally came to the conclusion, what does it matter if it happened to me personally and I just can't remember it? Or if I just knew from such a young age that some men want to do this to me, and I had to hold that. Does that not create the same kind of incestuous sexual abuse in a culture as you can do one-on-one with a little girl? I mean, does it not create the same kind of trauma responses? I started noticing my trauma responses when I was 15, and I was reading a women's magazine, and it was talking about rape survivor symptoms. And I noticed that I had a lot in common with these symptoms. And I talked to my mom about it, and she acted like I was insane. And like, again, does it matter if those symptoms came from one person touching me in this story that I can remember and I can recount to you?
Well, I think
Is
it's to
our
do with. Sorry, I didn't realize you hadn't
is
finished.
our
You carry on.
experience not the evidence itself?
In some respects, I'd say. I think it's indicative of how the culture is trauma training women to think this is part of the cultural water. And I know we actually have an episode on trauma training and how it conditions women to enter prostitution and conditions them for abuse. And I think what you're experiencing here is a symptom of that. That, it's in the cultural water. You get this fear response, you get this tension in your shoulders, and it's almost like this preparation for something that's going to happen because it's all around you. And I think there's a lot of women who are like that, naturally fearful, naturally tense, naturally second guessing their movements because it's just everywhere.
And I've heard other women talk about, like, I don't know why I feel this way. It's anxiety. I just have anxiety because nothing's ever happened to me personally.
Yet.
And I say,
Yeah, but it always
well,
could.
you're responding to something real. You're experiencing
Yeah.
something real.
Like, yeah, the threat of violence is tangible. like everywhere,
everywhere.
like especially now. Like I think it's gotten much worse over the last 5-10 years, especially with the rise. And I know everyone like does the Andrew Tate thing to death, but there's that, and there's also the growing cultural acceptance of misogyny through porn. There's also kind of escalating violence that isn't being tackled by the police. So in the UK, I think there was 20,000 police officers taken off the beat. And it got to the point there were so few police officers, they were only investigating every other burglary in some districts. Like they'd only investigate houses with even numbers. There were so few cops like around that there were, even in deprived areas, I'm not kidding you, there were just cutouts of police officers in shops to try and deter aberrant behavior.
Sorry, just
So if
so I
you're in-
understand, why were these guys taken off were they trying to save money, or
Austerity
were they
measures. Yeah,
austerity? Okay,
measures.
got it.
Yeah.
Mm.
So this is it was a conservative measure. I don't think they've been put back entirely yet. I need to double check that. But this means that creates a further lawless society where violence can escalate because there's literally no one like boots on the ground policing you. And then they were shutting down the courts, and then the courts had a backlog. And then there was the Crown Prosecution Service that still has a backlog. There are women waiting close to a decade for their rape, for basically their rape trials to happen because there's such a backlog. And then I think it was 2016, the Crown Prosecution Service was told to throw out complex rape cases. So we've had, at least in the UK, the systemic breaking down of law and order while misogyny has been rising and sexual violence has been rising, essentially decriminalising rape. No wonder women are walking around in the UK tense as fuck.
Yeah.
Sorry, I have to go get some water, so I'll be right back, but please carry on.
It makes
Okay,
me
no
think of the rise of far right politics across the world here in the US, right? There is so much misogyny and brutality at the heart of those ideologies.
Yes.
They're sort of patriarchy distilled, right? Like crystallized.
Yes.
Yes. And the increase in harm that is going to flow with that, it means that you are always in a world where that menace, as we were saying, is there. It will affect you. It will affect you whether something physical happens to you or not. You know, because it's a set of fears. It's a set of fears that men don't think about, right? But we're reminded all the time in little ways that danger is there, right? We're reminded when we walk to our car. We're reminded when we get on the bus. We're reminded on the metro. You know, we're reminded on television that you're just this far away from something terrible. And of course that creates anxiety. Of course that creates just this, I call it the sort of ambient background noise, right, of men's violence. It's just, it's kind
terrorism,
of
right?
It's like the radiation of the universe. It's like that. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
And the background radiation of men's violence, and it cannot not affect you.
Yeah.
It just can't.
Yeah. You have to be immensely socially unaware for it not to affect you. And that's
well, and we talk about terrorism affecting populations.
Oh yeah.
Why
sexual violence is terrorism.
What we call terrorism. Yeah, exactly. This is my point is and it's ubiquitous, just like the non-state torture. And then I really like calling things the same thing. I don't like euphemisms. I don't like different words for different. If it's the same thing, it's the same thing. If it's the same activity and we call it torture over here, then it's torture. If it's the same activity and it's causing the same results, that's terrorism. We have to call it that.
Yeah, I agree. I also think typifying it and understanding what it is on a more nuanced level is also really important. So for example, it sounds really odd, but like, say for example, you're going bird watching, you're like, oh, there's loads of birds. I saw loads of birds today. But like one could be an eagle, one could be a sparrow, one could be a really rare bird. it's important to typify and identify those birds and their different kind of, mating habits or what they eat and things like that. If you want to be a good bird watcher, if you want to spot different types of terrorism, if you want to spot different types of misogyny and violence and that kind of thing, it's good to nuance and typify them while also understanding they come under the same umbrella. So it's kind of like an evolutionary tree of terrorism. That sounds terrible, but it's true.
As long as we know they're all
It's
birds.
so bad. Yeah,
As long as we
this
recognize
type of
that.
misogyny is tapeism. Yes, sorry.
I mean,
Yes.
I have a lot of gripes with Wikipedia, but they do have some of these like categories, and I think they have a very extensive violence against women category. It'd be even more extensive if they let women do more edits, because anyway. But if you look at like the types of crimes that are like, I mean, they would call it gender-based, but sex-based violence against women. It's a long list, and it's like very potent to see it like visually put. I mean, I can even, let me see if I can just if we want to just take a brief look at that.
Yeah, go for it.
I think I'm still not good at screen sharing, but I can read from it. So let me see if I can find it.
It's okay. And remember, while you're waiting, you can go to redletexpose.betterworld.org to get a ticket for our raffle. The winners are announced June the 28th, and it closes 11:59 Pacific Standard Time. You can get one of 20 fabulous prizes, depending on which ticket you get, and you can get more than one ticket. So please remember, you can buy one for you, buy one for a friend, buy one for a loved one. That is redletexpose.betterworld.org. Winners announced June 28th.
Okay, so
You can buy one for me.
I can buy you a long distance house blessing, Sybil Jo.
Here's I put it in.
I'll give you some remote joy. It's all good. Joy and sisterhood.
So this is it's a long one. I don't know. I can speed through it if that feels like something we should do.
Sure, go for it. Like potted history.
So it's heavy though. It's
What's the touch points?
Here we go. It starts with, bride burning, dowry death, honor killing, femicide, infanticide, matricide, violence against pregnant women, sati, which is a type of widow burning, sororicide, eroxicide. I actually don't know what sororicide and eroxicide are. Victoria, you're good with. Oh, so sororicide is the act of murdering one's own sister, and eroxicide is killing one's own wife. Okay, we learned some Latin, or is that Greek? Then we've got sexual violence, child sexual violence, forced prostitution, cyber sex trafficking, human trafficking, fetish slaves, sexual slavery. We've got acquaintance rape, rape by deception, corrective rape, date rape, gang rape, genocidal rape, rape of pregnant women, prison rape, statutory rape, threatening rape, unacknowledged rape, wartime rape. We've got campus rape, child rape, when you're being attacked by the person who's in service, as in like someone who's supposed to care for you, mass rape. We've got we have the virgin cleansing myth, the widow cleansing myth, which leads to rape, acid attacks, breast ironing, FGM, foot binding, gaslighting, dating abuse, domestic violence. There's a bunch of words here that I don't know. There's Eve teasing, forced abortion, forced feeding, forced marriage, forced pregnancy, forced sterilization, intimate partner violence, marriage by abduction, marry a rapist laws, online gender-based violence, which has like a million subcategories underneath, sexual bullying, witch trials. We could go on. I don't want to.
I was trying so hard not to interrupt you because I wanted to stop you when you read. I know about all of this, but when you read it out loud like that, I don't like to hear. I don't like to hear it in a list. I realized.
I'm sorry.
Wow.
I wasn't trying to trivialize.
No, thank you. No, the opposite. Like I said, I didn't want to interrupt you because I want to honor every bit of it. But
sorry, I have an it's a lot. And sorry, I have an incredibly dark sense of humor. So I was just about to say that's the worst iteration of 12 Days of Christmas I have ever heard. So. It's the only way I can cope. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
and if you look at it, prostitution, sexual exploitation is in the middle of it all because it all intersects right there. You know, one thing that I've never heard anyone talk about except prostitution buyers on their forums, which is women who suffered FGM who are in prostitution.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my god.
And that
Well,
is going
yeah,
to,
of course.
around the world, that is going to be hundreds of thousands, millions,
Yeah.
probably. And we hear about them separately. We don't hear about them together. Because again, the women who are affected by both, the chance that they get a public platform and feel okay speaking on a public platform of something so intimate and personal,
Mhm.
we don't hear it. It's not there. So
No, I think the only time I have ever, okay, so there's been 2 counts, I think. There's one I know, campaign to end FGM, and I also know one ex-Muslim who has had FGM done to her, but I've never heard a woman speak out on FGM and being prostituted. I just think,
and they have to be countless.
yeah,
But of
there
course,
has to
yeah,
be.
of course we know. I mean, they have. Mm, I've heard. I don't even. I can't say the words out loud.
It's all right.
Yeah, like it really gets to you, doesn't
I've heard
it?
of things that I know that exists. That's my point.
Yeah, and it just like it gets to you when it's when it's just spelled out so plainly. And just the fact that misogyny and violence against women and just takes so many forms and iterations. The fact it's basically I feel like men's sadistic violence is pretty much boundless, and it's not every single man, obviously, but it goes to show you just how in danger you are as a woman just being in the world. Like how many women are being put into forced marriages by now? How many women are being raped? How many women are being murdered? It really hammers it home when you just have a list like that. And I do have to question them. I know it's trite and a very cynical move to make, but I do wonder about the motives of Wikipedia having it, if I'm honest, because of how Wikipedia is made.
I use Wikimedia all the time, which is their library of photos, and I found a lot of pornography on there. And this is not when I'm looking, it's not when I'm looking for like historic evidence of, when I talk about something historic and I'm just looking for an illustrative photo of a time period or something that has to do with sexual exploitation where maybe something could come up. I've just looked for images of like, can you give me photos from women in the 70s? I just needed, like, I know women walking on the street, women working, women, and pornography pops up. And I just typed in woman, which brings me back to what I was going to say way earlier when we were talking about ChatGPT. I've tried Sora, which is, I believe that's OpenAI's image creation AI, image, video and image. And I tried out a few things. I wanted it to generate images of goddesses. You know what it generates: women in metal bikinis.
Oh my god!
Yeah, of course it does. Of course it does.
So I mean, we come full circle. We started with disembodiment in AI, and we're back in it because all this is a really, really bad giant circle.
Isn't it just?
Yeah.
Yes.
But that's why the work we do is really important. And just the last shout, if you do want to get a ticket, you can go to redlightexpose.betterworld.org and you can win one of 20 fabulous prizes, including a $500 Canadian gift card, a year subscription to Medusa Rising, and even a body paint or makeup Zoom session from yours truly. So go to redlightexpose.betterworld.org and the winners will be announced June 28th.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Victoria, for doing that. I'm always like, we just talked about something really heavy, and now we got to put on the announcer voice. So thank you.
That's okay. It's well, like again, it helps.
Like, of things.
Yeah. I think so. I think in some respects, like, part of me thinks I've really seen too much. The other part of me is like, well, the show must go on, and if you can add a bit of razzle dazzle to the pain, it kind of makes it easier to bear. I think that's why a lot of people who've gone through so much just have like such weird senses of humor, and so it just helps, basically. I think so, and also we're doing a good thing. It's like I said, I wouldn't be here if I didn't think we were. We weren't making a difference, and it clearly makes a difference to the survivors that we've interviewed. It makes a difference to the people who are listening. It makes a difference, where people just think sex work is work. Like, it's really important work. So the show must go on, right?
It's an absolutely vital perspective. Yeah. I mean, we can't get forward without addressing this.
Exactly.
I was going to say, speaking of the like hundreds of guests that we want to bring on, one topic that I'm really passionate about, and I think all of us are interested in, is history and folklore. And I'm really interested also in the replacement of the mother goddess with the father god and the dominant god, and then the goddess turns into the witch and all of that. So Esmeé, if you wanted to come on sometime for us to talk everything that you know in that realm. I mean, I'm sure we could talk 3 hours just about that right now.
Yes, but no.
You want to tease it?
No, there's food needs to be eaten and dogs need to be walked. The person you want for that, I mean, I would love to. It's one of my favorite things to talk about. But the person you want for that is Max Dashu.
Yes, she's on the list.
Yeah.
She's top of the list.
Yeah, she is literally the encyclopedia. But I will be happy to be like, second fiddle. Yes.
Okay, hear me out. What if we did like a live stream, like roundtable session, and like an episode? So we could do an entire like live stream session on this with you, Max, Ellie. I mean, I'd love to be involved as well. Like Sybil Joe, if you'd like to be involved, I think it would be
Ellie,
a really
we've been
kind of
talking
cool...
about doing more live streams, haven't we?
Yes.
I've heard you mention wanting to do a bi-weekly, maybe something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because currently our publishing schedule is we do like a properly like planned, recorded, edited, post-produced. It's an intense process that can take months sometimes. And then we publish the episode, and that we were going to do it weekly. That's turned out to be too intense on every front. So we're doing it bi-weekly. But there's always so much more to talk about. And often we want to react to something that's happening right now. I'm interested in what happened 6,000 years ago, but I'm also very interested in right now. And to cover that, these off-the-cuff live streams would enable us to do that. Even that costs money. Frankly, the software we're using right now, we can only stream to Twitter. If we had a bigger budget, we could be streaming to YouTube and Facebook and other places all at the same time, reaching more people. So if you want us to be able to do that, please do consider donating and or buying a ticket. But yeah, no, we want to do that. And what we could do is do a structured episode, because I think there's something, some people don't want to do these 3-hour live streams. Some people want like 1 hour, an hour and a half max, neat, edited. And some things I feel like are good in that format. And then a week later, we could do the live stream. And if Max wants to come on again, we can do it or we just process it together and expand on it together. That's what we could do. So that's kind of what I'm thinking.
She's like a living archive, this woman. Yeah.
She's incredible.
I once got to meet her in person in Munich when she did the presentation on the subject of the spinner. Is that the English word as well? The woman who spins. The fates and the spider goddesses and the spider witches and I loved it.
So cool. Oh my god.
Yeah.
That's like a star dream experience. Oh my gosh.
And if I'm not mistaken, she was recently talking about like also the theme of it turning into the so-called prostitute, so-called whore, like the women's image and how that ties into all of it. And that's exactly what I would love to talk about.
I'm sure she would be able to find time to do that.
Yeah.
She's incredibly generous. So that'd be really, really fun.
For little old us.
Yeah. So, like we can have a proper episode and like, a proper full-on live stream. That's freaking amazing.
Yes.
So, and I love these as well because like the conversation just flows and it's just so lovely. Because I feel like as well sometimes, like when I'm in serious podcast mode, I don't know if you get this too, Ellie or Esmeé or Sybil Joe, but like on occasion, I feel like, I think it's a bit inappropriate to joke or be a bit, funny, and I feel a little bit sort of, because it's such a serious subject. I feel like, is it appropriate for me to do that? And I feel more relaxed on a live stream, and I feel more able to kind of be a little bit more organic. And so I feel like, live stream kind of, it gives you that warmth and that flexibility sometimes where, sometimes podcasts don't. So I feel like live streaming more would be a fantastic idea, at least to my mind, I just think we vibed off each other so well.
Yeah, we could tag team with the Gorgon Plastic podcast,
Oh my God, yes! Yes!
Have a round robin of chats on various subjects. It would be super fun. Yeah.
Oh my God, yeah, let's do that.
What happens? I don't, we'll see what comes. I think that would be
ferocious.
Yeah.
Can you tell us just a little bit about the other women at Medusa Rising? Like, what are their passions? What are their topics, their work? Or is it
Well,
so
there's
eclectic
Victoria.
it's hard to summarize?
Yeah. Well, there's just a few of us. There's a woman named Erin. She is Japanese, and she's sort of our link to the women in Japan. And she took on this project all by herself. She's running her own podcast in Japanese, bringing essential concepts from radical feminism to women in Japan. Because what happens in a lot of the world is that, like, a feminism arrives there, but it's third wave feminism. Like, they skip the
Yes.
radical feminist part, right?
Yes.
So she's sort of trying to bring the radical feminist concepts in and sort of familiarize people with this, because they don't have any of the books translated. You know, that's one of the ways that information flow is controlled, right? Is through translation, what gets chosen, because it's such an intensive process. So anyway, she's doing that. So for Medusa Rising, she's working on a series of essays we're calling key ideas. So if you're on the website and you see like a light bulb with a key sticking out of it, that's one of the things that she wrote. And she's working on a couple of other ideas that she wants to approach also. So it's really cool because she's a philosopher, but not the same kind as I am. And so she's able to sort of break down ideas into really careful, distinct parts and then explain them to people. Whereas I am forever combining things. Like, my brain just is like, then let's put that together, which is not always helpful. So it's really, really great having her around. And she's enjoying, I think, the time she's got with us. She's finishing a dissertation right now. So we'll have more of her soon when she gets a little rest. Aja Lyons is an American writer and poet. She has deep backgrounds in activism in the US, working in reproductive justice for a really long time, and is also has a background in it's ecological. What is it called? Ecological thought. It's a sort of humanities approach to ecological justice and climate issues. So she's got a whole bunch of facets going on. There's Victoria, of course, with her magnificence. And Zara Kashpa, who is known by Zara Kashpa on Twitter, is currently based in the UK and is going to be writing things for us. She's just been running around trying to get a whole new phase of her life together while helping me set up Medusa Rising. So, but she's also kind of our social media consultant person. And we're trying to find as many women who are jacks of all trades, Jills of all trades, because I want to keep this small and I want to be able to make just enough money to pay the women who contribute work to the project and pay the women who actually do the management of the project, at least a little walking around money. It's one of the constant struggles in women's movement that we are massively underfunded compared to the things that we are trying to work on or work against. And if we can get a little more of our resources, few as they are, dedicated to each other, we might be able to get more women doing this work more regularly. The fact that you have to do a lot of this work for free prevents lots of women from lots of communities from being in some of this work because they can't afford to do anything for free.
And it can actually impoverish activists. There's a lot of activists.
Yeah, so many.
Yeah.
And
so
I was going to say,
our subscriptions aren't expensive and we're not going to pay anybody very much, but we're just going to try to turn it into a little tiny economy, a little bit capitalist. But yeah, those are the women at Medusa Rising right now. And eventually people may move on, people may move through, we may look for new folks. Yeah.
Oh, it sounds amazing. I lived a year in Japan, so I'm really interested. With the age of 16, it was very formative.
Wow. Yeah.
And I'm still processing everything that I witnessed. And I lived with a host family, and my host mom actually worked in a shelter for abused children.
Wow.
While also always having these host children, so myself and there were others before me, and she would always tell me about like the culture of silence. Like we think we have a culture of silence. She was like, "No, you do not talk about this. Not like if you got a problem, it's your problem. You don't, that's what she, as a Japanese woman, is in her assessment. That mirrored what I felt like a lot of the teenagers I met were going through.
Mhm.
So I'm always interested. I'm definitely gonna keep up, and if you can share, I want to follow all these women now and see what they're up to. But
Yeah,
especially Erin and Japan. I still have a lot
yeah.
of attachment.
It-
Lots of her
That's true.
tweets are in Japanese, but the translation
No
machine is not
problem.
terrible. So
No, I
That's
follow
Japanese.
some Japanese women,
Yeah.
and I want
I
to
was
bring
gonna
some
say, don't you
Japanese
read
women on the
Japanese?
show. I'm not fluent.
Sorry. Oh, okay.
Uh,
But still, like, you know a bajillion times more than like all of us, I think.
What
Yeah.
you said, the differing philosophies and the differing ways of coming at the same material. I lived in a women's Zen center for a little while in my early 20s, and my teacher studied closely under Katagiri Roshi and studied in Japan for a long time. And so I got some of that Japanese influence in my philosophy and my way of doing things. And um, I think that I would be really interested in seeing the way that she translates these ideas.
if any of the Gorgon sisters want to come on here sometime, they're very welcome. Just to
Oh my
hang out.
Oh,
gosh.
sure, I'll make sure
Yes!
to tell
That's what
them.
she's saying, round
Yeah.
robin, yeah.
I'll make sure to
Do
tell
it, do
them.
it, do
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Aja is
Yes.
a tremendous pod guest. She's just very good at being a guest. She's really warm and really knowledgeable, and yeah, she's just terrific. She's terrific to hang out with. So yeah. I don't think Erin will want to necessarily. I mean, we'll ask her. She may, but we'll see. We'll see. She's a little more to herself, I think, than
Oh, that's okay.
us
It's a shame,
extroverts.
but that's okay.
Yeah.
There's
we'll
so
see.
much on the website. I'm just scrolling it, and I have a lot to catch up on.
Honey, we've only been in business since January, so
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I'm excited for what's gonna happen.
Me too.
Yeah. This feels pretty amazing. I think we could do some very cool things next to each other, but also with each other. I think that'd be awesome.
And just to reiterate, I love your logo. It's beautiful.
It's so
you.
cool, isn't it? Ah!
Yeah, I love my little abstracted, sneaky Triskel sort of situation back there. Thanks so much.
Like a static image that feels like it's moving. That's perfect. Yeah.
It's beautiful.
9 degrees off of level, and there you go. It feels like it's about to take a step. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, look at her giving the secrets. Magicians should never tell.
Oh, babe, it's just enough.
Sisterhood.
Yes.
Yeah. There you go.
We do
Well-
hope to bring some Red Light Expose merch one of these days. Some stickers, postcards, tote bags, whatever it is people do want to buy t-shirts.
Yeah.
But one of the things, it's been going 3 hours. We should finish soon. One last thought I was going to say is, one of the things that Victoria and I talk about all the time, how can we find a visual language around prostitution that makes it clear this is prostitution, but it is not misery porn. It is not porn.
It's not sexy.
And it's not just a vague women's empowerment image. Like, how can we visualize it? Because ideally, that is what we would like for Red Light Expose, if we will. Obviously Victoria's an artist. I did an arts degree in my bachelor's. Can we come up with something that people would want on their t-shirt, would want on their, would want a poster or whatever it is, would want a sticker of that can carry that message? And it's not that obvious and easy on how to make that come alive visually.
I like what they did with Trafficking Hub.
What did they do?
What was her name? Lila
Mickleway. Yeah, she's amazing.
Yes. They did like a little porn hub, but it was Trafficking Hub. So it was a recognizable logo.
Right.
With
subverted
a message overlaid.
Like there's people who've taken the OnlyFans logo and gone Only Enemies. Or they've gone, the other one is Lonely Fans. I
like that.
I don't.
Yeah.
We could do a parody of like all the porn logos.
Oh my god, that'd be amazing. I did see one which was Only Fiends, which I thought was pretty good because they're the only ones who are going to buy the stuff. So I thought that was quite nice.
What's the fiend again? Sorry, as a non-identified.
Only Fiends. Fiends is a monster. Only Fiends.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. So So it's kind
Okay.
of a little bit on the grim realities.
Yeah.
But yes, but I think this has been a really freaking amazing, energetic, wonderful live stream. And yeah, I always feel so much better just speaking to you ladies, because you're just brilliant in every single way. And just thank you for being incredible and doing the work that you do, because the world would not be the same without you. This work is really essential. And I'm going to do one more plug before we sign off. So if you want to support our essential work, you can go to redlightexpose.betterworld.org and get tickets for our raffle. We've got 20 amazing prizes, including a long distance house blessing, a year's worth of Medusa Rising, a year's worth of Libby app as well. We've got brilliant bracelets. We have amazing books. We've got tickets to a women's film festival, so you can see it along 3 days. And you've also got a makeup Zoom session by yours truly, where you can get into your war paint or create the fantasy creature of your dreams. So you can go to redlightexpose.betterworld.org to get tickets, and the raffle closes 11:59 Pacific Standard Time, and then winners will be announced June 28th. Once again, that's redlightexpose.betterworld.org. Or if you want to give us a one-off donation, you can go to the Red Light Expose website and just give us a one-off donation from there. And thank you so much for staying with us and listening.
It's over 200 people tuned in, so really appreciate that.
Woohoo!
Thank you all.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Such a good
Also,
thing.
can I just, like,
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
well, can we just give each other a round of applause, because we're just like ferocious? Would that be right? Woo!
I like it.
Yes! Preach, sister, preach.
So good to get to hang out with you all. Sybil Joe, it's so good to meet you. This
You
is-
too.
Yeah.
Because
Very
I
welcome.
have a lot to pick your website and your brain about. A lot
Come
of
on
things that
by.
you said really
I'm open
resonated. Yeah.
24/7. So
I'm here. And as far as the live streams, yeah, if we wanted to set up like a, third week of the month or whatever we decided the thing was, and then I'll put it on my calendar and it'll just become part of
Yeah.
my schedule.
we will
I'm
figure that
available
out.
here.
Sign me up. Sign me up.
We will figure that out. Right. Well, thank you.
Fabulous.
Thank you for inviting me. It has been an absolute pleasure. Yeah, just super
Thank you
cool.
so
I hope
much.
the fundraiser brings in all kinds of money so that you could do all kinds of good things.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, we won't stop.
Blessings.
Yes, we won't stop either way, but it is helpful. Money does
Absolutely.
make the world go round. Ugh.
It does, sadly.
You know.
Yes.
Yes, it does. All right. Well, good night, good morning, good luck.
Yes.
All right.
You too, lovely.
Bye,
Right.
everyone.
Give a hug from me.
Bye.